Chapter 1329. This is natural. When Bo Yan and the others left, they specially left behind a communication device for convenience. Once they encounter any situation, they can quickly send back news. Long Zhe and the others have been taking turns to guard the teleportation formation during this period of time, so they definitely won't make a mistake. Elder Hua Feng looked at Chu Liyue strangely. Why are you suddenly asking this? Chu Liyue's lips curled up slightly. It's nothing. This student just felt that the northern region of the Great Desolate Land is so far away from the academy, so it should be very inconvenient to send messages back and forth. Elder Hua Feng laughed out loud. Kid, this is of course an inconceivable thing to you now. But if you can follow this old man to cultivate Xian formations, breaking through to become a top expert in the future will be a piece of cake. Chu Liyue didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Elder Hua Feng was really persistent about this matter. He really didn't know what kind of expression he would have if he knew that he had already broken through to the Xian King realm. When the elders beside him heard this, they all revealed expressions of understanding. So this was Hua Feng's plan. They had indeed heard some things about Chu Yu before. Other than being a celestial physician, he was also quite talented in Xian master and martial arts. This was already a publicly acknowledged fact among the elders. From this, it could be seen that Hua Feng was really concerned about this child. The Heavenly Square Cauldron is one of the 10 great sacred artifacts. There will definitely be many people going to the northern region of the Great Desolate Land to fight for it. I'm afraid there will be a fierce battle in the future. An elder said in a deep voice. Our primary goal is not the Heavenly Square Cauldron, but if there is such an opportunity, we naturally can't miss it. That's right. Such an opportunity is hard to come by, so we must grasp it well. I just don't know. What's the situation over there? I heard that there are many first-rate families and sects going this time, and a few of them are our old enemies. The northern region of the Great Desolate Land is an extremely vicious place. Someone might take the opportunity to attack, so we must be careful. I remember that the Golden Wing sect is there. At this point, the elders looked at Chu Liyue in tacit understanding. Chu Liyue's eyelids twitched slightly. Elder Hua Feng said, it doesn't matter if they go. The Heavenly Square Cauldron is right in front of them. Do you think they would care about their past conflicts with us? Previously, that disciple of his brought people to cause a ruckus at our academy's entrance. It's already good enough that we didn't pursue the matter. After saying that, he couldn't help but lower his voice and say to Chu Liyue, Kid, you have to follow us closely from now on. Don't mess around on your own, okay? Chu Liyue nodded seriously. It was a long journey from Lingshao College to the northern region of Untainted Land. Even if there was a teleportation formation that could bring them there directly, it would still take a long time. Chu Liyue spent most of his time silently cultivating. Since she couldn't devour origin power here, she began to study profound formations and prescriptions. Ever since she broke through to the Xian King Master level, she felt that the complicated Xian formations that appeared in her mind were much simpler. She simulated those Xian formations in her mind over and over again, and very quickly, she became proficient in them. As for the celestial physician, although she had already memorized all the prescriptions in the physician's medicine manual, she had never had the chance to try it out, so she had never been able to break through. She could only wait until she was free to study it properly. I didn't expect that I would be able to see this teleportation formation open in my lifetime. After a long time, the elders gradually relaxed when they saw that Chu Liyue was sensible and obedient. An elder sighed and said, This was personally built by the first dean back then. At that time, almost no one in the entire Divine Ruins could compare to him. It's a pity that no one inherited his legacy. Hearing this, Chu Liyue, who was silently memorizing the Xian formation, opened his eyes curiously. Elder, why is that so? The first principle of the Spirit Firmament Academy it was easy to imagine what kind of person he was back then. How could such a person not find a disciple to accept his legacy? Wasn't that too much of a pity? Elder Hua Feng smiled helplessly and explained, I heard that back then, that person was extremely picky. Although he established Lingxiao College and took in many students, he was not satisfied with any of them, so he handed them all over to the other elders. Until he died, As he spoke, Elder Hua Feng's face revealed a regretful expression. The first dean was a world-shaking genius. He was a martial artist, a Xian master, a celestial physician, and a refiner. He was proficient in everything. And all of them were top-notch. It was normal for such a person to have high standards. If a student could inherit everything from him back then, the scene today would be very different. Back then, because he left in a hurry, many precious manuals were not preserved. His ultimate techniques have become nothing but empty air. Chu Luiyue nodded in understanding. An elder beside her sighed softly and said, actually, there were many people who followed the dean back then. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to establish Lingxiao College. At that time, there was no lack of geniuses among the students recruited by Lingxiao College. If the dean was willing to teach them personally, they might have become peerless experts. But that person's temperament was too stubborn. No was no. There was no room for compromise. There were thousands of people who wanted to cultivate with him, but unfortunately, he was unwilling. No one could do anything about it. Elder Hua Feng shook his head. Although it's a pity, sometimes, we have to pay attention to the fate of master and disciple. If he forced himself to accept a disciple that he didn't like, it wouldn't be good for either side. Back then, the dean was such a carefree person. There was no need for him to do something that he didn't like. Many people felt that it was an extremely pity that the first dean didn't leave behind his inheritance, but Elder Hua Feng understood very well. Wasn't Wanjing like this? All these years, if he didn't like anyone, he wouldn't let go and wouldn't accept a single one. It wasn't a problem for him to give lessons to the students, and it was also fine for him to occasionally give them pointers. However, if he were to teach everything he had learned to one person, that wouldn't do. Unless it was someone who could catch his eye. A few years ago, one finally appeared, but in the end, he was intercepted. Now that he had met Chu Yu, he naturally wouldn't let go. Thinking of this, Elder Hua Feng suddenly felt a little guilty. If Wanjing knew that he was still thinking about Chu Yu, then it would really be. That elder nodded. You're right, but, back then, the first dean was especially talented in Xian masters. It's really a pity that so many powerful Xian formations have disappeared. If only I had the chance to see it with my own eyes. We're already very lucky to be able to restart this Xian formation. Don't think too much about anything else. After saying that, the elders all fell into silence at the same time. Chu Luiyue also quieted down and waited silently. Time slowly passed. Finally, after a long period of suffering, the group was about to arrive at the northern border of the primordial world. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1330. We're almost there. As Elder Hua Feng spoke, his expression became much more solemn. The other elders also stood together, looked at each other, and then attacked together. A bright Xian formation suddenly appeared in the darkness ahead. Soon, the Xian formation split open from the middle and slowly opened to both sides. Bright white light shone in from the outside. Let's go. With Elder Hua Feng's order, he took the lead and rushed out. Chu Luiyue and the other elders followed closely behind. Cold. Very cold. This was the first feeling Chu Luiyue had after coming out of the teleportation formation. Looking ahead, there was a vast expanse of white snow. Other than that, there was nothing else. The sky was dark, as if it had just finished university. Dumpling, who was in his dantian, moved, and a warm aura instantly surged throughout his body. Chu Luiyue felt much better this time. Hiss. Why is this place so cold? Behind him, an elder couldn't help but shiver. As he spoke, he hurriedly set up a barrier around himself. I've long heard that the environment in the northern region of the Great Desolate Land is harsh, but I didn't expect it to be so terrifying. They were all god-level experts, so ordinary cold and heat had no effect on them. For them to have such a big reaction, it could be seen that this place was unimaginably cold. Chu Yu, are you all right? Another elder couldn't help but ask when he saw that Chu Luiyue's expression was normal. Chu Luiyue blinked and smiled. Thank you for your concern, elder. My contracted beast is a red-tailed phoenix, so I'm fine. No wonder. Cultivators below the god level probably wouldn't be able to stay here for long. At first, they were worried because they had brought Chu Yu here, but now, it seemed that this child didn't need them to worry. This matter changed the elders' impression of Chu Luiyue, and they looked at her with much gentler expressions. Elder Hua Feng silently looked at Chu Luiyue. Red-tailed phoenix. That's right, she broke through from the red-tailed phoenix in the first place. Chu Luiyue's expression remained the same. An elder looked around and couldn't help but ask, where are Bo Yan and the others? This place was covered in snow, so it would be difficult to quickly find them. Elder Hua Feng took out his green jade token. 2 light spots were quietly flickering on it. One of them was his, and the other was naturally Elder Bo Yan's. He looked for a while and finally determined the direction to the right. It should be over there. However, it seems that there is still some distance. Even if we rush there at full speed, it will take us several hours. As he spoke, he looked up at the sky. It's just that the snow is so deep. I'm afraid that my speed will be reduced by more than half. There's no other way. Flying in the air in this place was simply a moving target. We don't know who's here, so it's best to be careful. Even if he was much slower, he could not casually play with his own life. Elder Hua Feng nodded. Let's go. Just like that, the few of them slowly walked through the snow. With every step he took, a deep snow pit would appear behind him. After walking for a while, Chu Luiyue's body started to heat up. She gradually frowned, feeling that something was wrong. It wasn't like she had never walked in the snow before, so she knew that it was very tiring. But this time, it seemed to be a little too much. It was as if there was something below that was sticking to her feet, and every step she took was exceptionally strenuous. She couldn't help but look down, but she couldn't see anything. Other than the crystal-clear snow, there was nothing else. She hesitated for a moment before temporarily suppressing her thoughts. After a period of time, the other elders were clearly unable to take it anymore. Is there something strange about this place? Why is it so strenuous to walk in the snow? I think there's something wrong with this too. Logically speaking, we are all god-level experts. We've only walked here for an hour, so how could we consume so much energy? Hua Feng, what do you think? Elder Hua Feng, who was walking at the front, stopped and let out a long sigh. You're right. There's something fishy about this place. The elders stopped in their tracks. Chu Luiyue also stood still. The elders looked at her and realized that Chu Luiyue had been walking with them for so long, but she hadn't left them behind. Furthermore, from the looks of it, she didn't seem to be affected much. They couldn't help but be surprised. Did we really underestimate this kid's strength? In fact, the reason why Chu Luiyue was able to walk for so long and still maintain a relatively relaxed state was partly because of Dumpling, and partly because, after De Bao's training, her physical combat strength was indeed far higher than what she displayed. She looked at her feet again. Suddenly, she heard a rustling sound. She turned her head to look. A gray-faced deer crawled out of the snow and stuck its head out to look around. As if sensing her gaze, the gray-faced deer turned its head and met Chu Liyue's eyes. It immediately retracted its head vigilantly. Chu Liyue frowned. She felt that something was wrong. Could there be something wrong under the snow? One of the elders asked curiously. I think so too, but the snow is so thick, how are we going to check? We can't dig 3 feet into the ground, right? Elder Hua Feng shrugged helplessly. The elders looked at each other. Even if there was really something wrong with the ground, it would be impossible for them to solve it quickly with the strength of the few of them. Forget it, let's not care about this. Let's find Bo Yan and the others first and meet up with them. Another elder suggested. Chu Liyue looked around and suddenly asked, Elder, didn't Elder Bo Yan say that the heavenly square cauldron has appeared here? Why is there no movement at all? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1331. Chu Liyue's words stunned the elders and they subconsciously looked around. Between the heavens and the earth, there was only white snow, and it was silent. It seemed, something was wrong. Chu Yu's words make sense. The heavenly square cauldron is such a noble item. If it appeared, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. But now, it seems like nothing happened here. Could it have appeared elsewhere and didn't affect this place? That's why it looks like this. The elders discussed in low voices. Elder Hua Feng frowned. That's unlikely. Bo Yan sent a message saying that the heavenly square cauldron has appeared, so they must have seen it. Even if they aren't beside us, they shouldn't be too far away. And now, they are not far from us. If they saw it, then we should be able to see it too. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone fell silent. At this moment, they began to doubt the authenticity of this matter. No matter what, Bo Yan is nearby, so it should be correct. We might not be able to find out the truth even if we think about it. Why don't we meet them first? This suggestion received everyone's approval. Thus, after a little rest, they set off again. Chu Yu, let's go. Elder Hua Feng took 2 steps and saw that Chu Liyue didn't follow, so he shouted again. Coming. Chu Liyue responded and followed. However, she couldn't help but turn back and take another look, frowning slightly. She kept feeling that something wasn't right. The smell of blood on that gray-faced deer is too strong. Dumpling's voice suddenly entered her ears. Chu Liyue was shocked at first, but then she suddenly came back to her senses. That's right. This is the feeling. However, because it was a world of ice and snow, the smell of blood was also covered up. However, Dumpling was already a crimson gold heavenly phoenix, so her perception of such things was naturally much stronger than hers. If I haven't guessed it, it should have just been in a battle, and... Dumpling's voice paused. And, it's very full. Chu Liyue shuddered inexplicably. Although she had never seen a gray-faced deer with her own eyes before, she had a certain understanding of them. The so-called eating was, in fact, gnawing on bones. Judging from the strong smell of blood on its body, it was very likely that it had just died not long ago. There were very few people in this place. Even for magical beasts, if their level was not high enough and they were not strong enough, they would only die here. Then, that gray-faced musk deer, what exactly? Chu Liyue knitted her brows tightly. Recently, many people had come to the northern region of the primordial wilderness. Ignoring the others for the time being, the Spirit Firmament Academy had sent over 300 people. They should have passed by here as well. If something had really happened, a heavy snowfall would be enough to bury all traces. A heavy shadow loomed over his heart. After walking for a while, each of them had exhausted a lot of their physical strength. Even Elder Hua Feng's lips began to turn pale. He glanced at the green jade token in his hand, and his expression suddenly changed. What's wrong? The other elders saw that his expression was not right and immediately asked worriedly. Elder Hua Feng closed his eyes and carefully looked at the green jade token. 2 dots of light were close to each other. Logically speaking, they should have met Bo Yen and the others by now. But as far as the eye could see, there was still no one. When the elders saw the 2 dots of light that had almost gathered together on the green jade token, they were stunned for a moment before their expressions changed. What's going on? Where are they? Could it be that there's a problem with the green jade token? Elder Hua Feng said slowly, his voice dry. The aura in this green jade token was deliberately left behind by Bo Yen before he left. It can't be wrong. Now that they had clearly arrived, but they did not see anyone, they could not help but be suspicious. When the few of them heard this, they also quieted down and looked at each other. Elder Hua Feng, what is this? At this moment, Chu Liuyue's voice came from the side. The few of them raised their heads and saw that Chu Liuyue had walked a distance away. At this moment, he was holding something in his hand. Elder Hua Feng took a closer look and immediately said, "Quick, let me see." As he spoke, he did not care about Chu Liuyue and simply walked forward himself. Chu Liuyue handed the item over. It was a green jade token. The moment Elder Hua Feng saw it, he immediately confirmed his guess, this is Bo Yan's thing. Why is it here? He hurriedly looked at Chu Liuyue and asked anxiously, Chu Yu, where did you find it? Chu Liuyue pointed, it's where the student was standing just now. Originally, I just wanted to look around, but I suddenly felt as if I had stepped on something. I picked it up and saw this. Elder Hua Feng frowned and held the green jade token tightly in his hand. No wonder it always showed that Bo Yen and the others were here. So it was only this green jade token that was left here. But this was even more worrisome. Because this token was a symbol of identity, the elders and students of Lingxiao College would carefully keep it. If nothing had happened, this thing would not have appeared here for no reason. The other elders also realized this point, and their expressions changed. At this moment, a strange sound suddenly came from the side. Chu Liuyue turned around. This sound came from the snow not far behind her. Just when she thought it was the gray-faced deer and other magical beasts, the same sound came from other directions. Soon, the few of them were completely surrounded by this strange sound. Swish! Several faint blue lights suddenly flew out from under the snow. They intertwined in mid-air. A gigantic Xian formation cage instantly trapped the few of them. Digression, it was still updated at 7:00 and 12:00. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1332. Everything happened too suddenly. By the time they reacted, they were already trapped in the Xian formation. The entire Xian formation was in a semicircle, trapping them in the middle. It flickered with a faint blue light, causing one to shudder. What is this? An elder couldn't help but mutter softly before quickly looking around. Someone is lying in ambush here. Why didn't we notice it before? This Xian formation was set up in advance and placed here. Elder Hua Feng said in a deep voice. It should have been automatically triggered after we walked over. The construction and activation of any Xian formation required time and energy. The higher the level of the Xian formation, the more so. The Xian formation that trapped them here appeared so quickly. It was obvious that it had been prepared beforehand. Who would set up such a trap in this place? Among these elders, only Elder Hua Feng was a mystic cultivator. The rest were all martial artists. So at this moment, everyone subconsciously looked at him. The snowy plains were vast and endless. Even if someone really wanted to kill them, why did they have to choose such a place? What if they didn't come here? Wouldn't they have prepared for nothing? Elder Hua Feng gripped the green jade token in his hand tightly. It seems like Bo Yan's item was deliberately hidden here to lure us here. As soon as these words were spoken, the elders immediately came to a realization, but they also became even more worried. If that was the case, didn't it mean that the current situation of Elder Bo Yan and the others was also very worrying? Let's put everything else aside for now. Let's think of a way to leave this place first. Elder Hua Feng raised his head slightly and looked at the Xian formation above his head. Then, he slowly frowned. This caused the few people who had placed all their hopes on him to be filled with apprehension. After a long while, an elder asked tentatively in a low voice, "What's the matter?" "Hua Feng, is there a way to break this Xian formation?" Elder Hua Feng said in a deep voice, "This is the attack of a great grandmaster." "What?" Hearing this, the expressions of the few people changed. Chu Luiyue also narrowed her eyes slightly. Above level 9 Xian Masters was Xian King Masters. Above that was Great Xian King Masters. According to her understanding, Elder Hua Feng was an expert of this level. As for the Great Grandmaster, it was an even more terrifying existence. In the entire Lingxiao College, the number of mystic cultivators who had reached this level in the past 10,000 years could be counted on 2 hands. One could imagine how difficult it would be to solve this Xian formation. Even someone like Elder Hua Feng, who was one of the top figures in the academy, would find it extremely difficult to deal with it. Great Grandmaster. Doesn't that mean we can't get out? An elder murmured absent-mindedly. Hua Feng, are you sure you can escape from here? This was undoubtedly the question they were most concerned about. Elder Hua Feng closed his eyes with a solemn expression. "I don't know either. Aren't you only one step away from breaking through to the martial Grandmaster realm?" Another elder held on to his last glimmer of hope and asked cautiously, "It should be possible to unlock it, right?" Elder Hua Feng smiled bitterly. "A step is still a step. Moreover, how is this a step? It's clearly a natural moat." He had been a great Xian King Master for many years, so he knew how difficult it was to take this step. Compared to other great Xian King Masters, he might be stronger, but there was still a world of difference between him and a great Grandmaster. How could that chasm be filled so easily? Moreover, even if I can unlock it in the end, it will depend on how much time it will take. A few days is fine, but what about a month? What about 3 months? They couldn't keep waiting here. There was a suffocating silence. "Forget it, I'll give it a try first." Elder Hua Feng gritted his teeth. "If it really doesn't work, let's see if we can use other methods to force our way out." After saying that, he held his breath and focused on studying the Xian formation. The others didn't dare to disturb him and waited quietly at the side. Chu Luiyue also raised her eyes and carefully sized up the Xian formation. For some reason, she felt that this Xian formation was somewhat familiar. She was sure that she had never seen this Xian formation before. Just as Elder Hua Feng had said, this Xian formation was created by a great Grandmaster. It was the most complicated and difficult Xian formation that Chu Luiyue had ever seen. This made the sense of familiarity that welled up in her heart even more strange. Chu Luiyue's expression was calm, but her mind was spinning rapidly. Just where did this sense of familiarity come from? Soon, heavy snow fell from the sky. The cold wind was bone-piercing. It was easier to feel the cold if one stayed where they were. The cold air seemed to be able to penetrate the skin and directly pierce into the bones. It was like steel needles, dense and dense, causing one to feel extremely uncomfortable. Fortunately, Chu Luiyue had dumpling, so she basically avoided this kind of pain. However, the other elders were not as convenient as her. If they wanted to resist the cold, they had to burn their origin power. Therefore, on the surface, it looked like they were just resting here, but in reality, the strength in their bodies was rapidly being consumed every minute and every second. This time, they looked at Chu Luiyue with even more complicated expressions. They originally thought that she was a burden, but who would have thought that in the end, they would be the ones dragging her down? Sensing the gazes of the elders, Chu Luiyue turned around to take a look. Seeing their ears and cheeks that were red from the cold, her heart skipped a beat. If it weren't for the fact that she was worried about exposing Dumpling's identity, she would have really wanted to help. On the other side, Elder Hua Feng was still standing on the spot as if he had entered a meditative state, staring intently at the Xian formation in front of him. Light flowed and undercurrents surged. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1333. 2 hours passed in a hurry. There was still no movement from Elder Hua Feng's side. Other than his tightly knitted brows and the growing worry in his eyes. It was impossible for a great Xian King Master to crack a Xian formation left behind by a great master. Now, he could only hope that he could find the flaws in this Xian formation as much as possible. This way, if they worked together and used it as a breakthrough, there might be a chance of success. Although the other elders were anxious, they did not dare to rush him and could only wait silently. Chu Luiyue looked at it for a long time, but she still could not remember it. In addition, it was easy to feel dizzy after staring at it for a long time, so she simply changed to look at it. This Xian formation was very big, and the patterns on it were extremely complicated. She randomly chose a place and stared at it for a while. When she felt uncomfortable, she continued to look at it elsewhere. The other elders did not pay much attention to this matter. They had long known that Chu Luiyue was talented in Xian masters, so they treated it as her trying to learn and did not take it to heart. As Chu Luiyue looked at it, she subconsciously copied it in her mind. However, because the level of this Xian formation was too high, she had never succeeded. No matter how clearly she saw it with her eyes, what appeared in her mind was always a blurry mess. She had already expected this, so she did not give up and only watched slowly. Another 2 hours passed. The elders couldn't sit still any longer. The situation on Elder Bo Yan's side was very unclear, and they were trapped here. They did not know when they would be able to leave. Even if they left, they did not know where to find the others in the academy. At this point, even a fool could guess that something must have happened to them. However, there was still no progress on Elder Hua Feng's side. Chu Luiyue's surprised voice suddenly came from the side. The elders turned their heads and saw that she was staring at the Xian formation with a strange expression. Chu Yu, what's wrong? An elder asked. Chu Luiyue came back to her senses and smiled at the elders. Nothing, I just feel that this Xian formation is very profound. The work of a great master is naturally extraordinary. The elders did not doubt her and shook their heads helplessly. I wonder who is targeting us like this. In the entire Divine Ruins world, it wasn't that there weren't any first-rate families or sects with great grandmasters, but it was obvious that they couldn't confirm the other party's identity with just a profound formation. What's more, some sects and clans would deliberately hide experts of this level, which made it even harder to guess. Chu Luiyue retracted his gaze and exhaled without batting an eyelid. Looking at the profound formation in front of him, his eyes still carried a bit of shock that had not faded away. Because just now, she suddenly remembered where this sense of familiarity came from. The two profound formations that Dugu Maobao had left behind to test her were shockingly similar to the one in front of her right now. This feeling was hard to describe, and people who weren't mystic cultivators wouldn't be able to sense it. The reason for that was because this sort of similarity was truly too minute. Basically, it was all small details. Even she only realized it after staring at it for 4 hours. But isn't this too ridiculous? Judging from the power of this Xian formation's construction, it was definitely not Dugumobao's doing. However, this Xian formation was indeed similar to his. To say that this was just a coincidence, Chu Luiyue didn't believe it herself. She stood rooted to the ground in a daze as many scenes appeared in her mind, including Dugumabao forcefully trapping her in Jiuheng Mountain before she left. At that time, she felt that it was a little strange. Now that she saw this inexplicably similar profound formation, she was even more certain of her guess. Dugumabao deliberately didn't want her to come to the northern part of the Great Desolate Land. However, she was still confused as to who had created this Xian formation. Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment and decided to suppress this question first. She could ask Dugumabao directly when she met him in the future. But now, it was more important to leave this place directly. Thinking of this, Chu Luiyue turned to look at Elder Huafeng. He still maintained the same posture as he stared at the profound formation in front of him with a frown. Obviously, he hadn't found a solution yet. Elder Huafeng. Chu Luiyue suddenly spoke. Elder Huafeng turned around when he heard the voice. There was still a hint of confusion in his eyes. Chu Yu. What's wrong? The other elders also looked over with strange expressions on their faces. Chu Luiyue pursed her lips and said, "This student suddenly remembered that I seem to have seen a similar profound formation before." His casual words caused everyone's expression to change in an instant. Really? Elder Huafeng quickly walked over. Where did you see it? Who was the one who did it? Chu Luiyue hurriedly said, I saw it by chance in a cave. It was engraved on the stone wall. As for who left it behind, I don't know. Moreover, the level of that profound formation was much lower than this one. A trace of disappointment flashed across Elder Huafeng's face. He originally thought that he could break through from Chu Yu, but who knew that it was all for naught. Then, he suddenly thought of something. Then do you still remember what that profound formation looks like? Chu Luiyue nodded. I think so. Draw it for me to see. As Elder Huafeng spoke, he hurriedly made way for Chu Luiyue. It didn't matter even if it was a slightly lower level profound formation. As long as it was really similar, he might be able to start with that first and then solve this one. Chu Luiyue pressed her lips against each other and glanced at him uneasily. A long time has passed, and this student didn't look at it carefully at that time. There might be some mistakes in the middle. It's fine, you don't have to worry about this. Just draw it first. Elder Huafeng comforted her. Right now, he could only try his best to save a dead horse. As long as there was a little hope, he had to give it a try. Only then did Chu Luiyue let out a sigh of relief. Then this student will begin. After saying that, she held her breath and raised her arm gently. Her fair fingers waved gently in the air. A stream of light quietly flew out and then scattered into several rays that intertwined with each other. Elder Huafeng sighed in his heart. This Chu Yu was indeed extremely talented in the field of Xian masters. Although his movements weren't smooth enough, it was already very outstanding. If he could take him in as a disciple and train him well, he would probably be able to crush many students in the Xian master class. Even compared to Lin Qifei, who had recently risen to fame, he might not be inferior. Chu Luiyue's Xian formation construction speed was very slow. From time to time, she would have to stop and think. Moreover, there were many gaps in the Xian formation, and some lines were complicated and intertwined together. In short, it seemed that she really wasn't familiar with this Xian formation. After a long time, Chu Luiyue finally completed this Xian formation. She looked at Elder Huafeng nervously. Elder, it's roughly like this. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1334. The Xian formation that Chu Luiyue drew was the first Xian formation that Dugu Maobao tested her. At that time, she was still a level 9 Xian master. He left behind this Xian formation that clearly didn't match her level and left. Fortunately, this Xian formation wasn't particularly difficult. Especially compared to the one that he locked her up in Nineheng Mountain, it was simply a piece of cake. According to Chu Luiyue's current true strength, she could naturally draw a complete outline of it. But after thinking about it carefully, she still didn't do so. As a result, the current tattered profound formation could not be considered as one that she had successfully cast, but rather one that she had drawn. This way, it wouldn't arouse the suspicions of the elders. In the end, it didn't arouse any suspicions, but the elders looked at Chu Luiyue with disdain. Chu Yu, this is the Xian formation you made. The corner of an elder's eyes twitched. Chu Luiyue explained embarrassedly, because that Xian formation is too complicated. With this student's current strength, I am still unable to completely cast it, so I can only barely draw it. In addition, I don't remember it very clearly, so it became like this. It's fine, let me take a look. Elder Hua Feng didn't care and stared at the Xian formation carefully. The general outline of this Xian formation is indeed somewhat similar, although it was a little forced. Elder Hua Feng was a great Xian King teacher after all. He had seen countless Xian formations, and his sensitivity towards such things was only higher than Chu Luiyue. Therefore, after looking at it for a while, he gave an affirmative answer. I'll take a look and see if I can find a way. Perhaps, some ideas can be shared. Hearing his words, the other elders also became spirited. Elder Hua Feng stared at it for a long time. Of course, this couldn't be considered a complete Xian formation, but fortunately, the general structure was clear. Moreover, it was obvious that some small details were indeed extremely similar to the Xian formation that trapped them here. It was probably because Chu Yu really couldn't remember it clearly, so some of the lines were rather chaotic. Chu Yu, the lines in this place are all entangled together. What's going on? Elder Hua Feng pointed at one of them and asked. Ah. Chu Luiyue looked in the direction of his hand and smiled embarrassedly. Oh, you mean this? I really can't remember this part, so I just casually scratched it a few times. I don't know how it ended up like this. It's just a small piece, so it shouldn't have any effect, right? How can it not be affected? This was a Xian formation. Elder Hua Feng shook his head in disapproval. The higher the grade of the Xian formation, the more intricate it is. Even the slightest mistake can cause the entire Xian formation to collapse, let alone this kind of random action. This child's attitude in this aspect really needed to be corrected. Thank you for your guidance, Elder. This student will remember it. Chu Luiyue lowered his head slightly, seemingly a little guilty. His expression was sincere. Elder Hua Feng didn't really want to blame her, so he waved his hand. It's fine, it's fine. Remember this time, don't do it again in the future. Suddenly, Elder Hua Feng's eyes lit up as he stared at the profound formation with a faint flame of excitement. Elder, what's wrong with you? Chu Luiyue asked curiously. That's it. Elder Hua Feng laughed happily. Ha! That's it. Chu Luiyue looked at the Xian formation with a blank expression, as if she didn't understand what he meant. However, Elder Hua Feng had already turned around and looked at the dark blue barrier again. All of you, step back. Let me try and see if I can open this barrier. Elder Hua Feng's words shocked everyone present, and then they immediately retreated in unison. Elder Hua Feng raised his hand, and a brilliant stream of light appeared in his palm. He waved his hands faster and faster. Countless streams of light intertwined in front of him and quickly gathered into a small Xian formation. If one looked carefully, they would realize that the Xian formation in front of him was very similar to the one that Chu Luiyue had just drawn. In particular, there were several places that were comparable to the messy patterns on her Xian formation. Then, Elder Hua Feng slowly pushed the Xian formation forward with a solemn expression. Buzz! The small Xian formation quietly stuck to the huge blue Xian formation. As soon as it touched, it let out a buzzing sound. Because of his nervousness, Elder Hua Feng's back was already drenched in sweat. Seeing this reaction, he was delighted. His intuition told him that there was hope. However, he still didn't dare to relax in the slightest. He stretched out his hands and turned them slightly. The lines on the small Xian formation gradually changed. As if affected by this power, the blue Xian formation that was tightly attached to it also began to rotate. With it as the center, the blue flowing light around it gradually began to disperse into the surroundings. Seeing this shocking change, everyone present held their breaths. The surroundings were so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Elder Hua Feng's strength was quickly consumed, and his face quickly turned pale. With his current strength, it was obviously still somewhat difficult for him to open this Xian formation. "Help me!" he suddenly shouted in a low voice. The elders behind him immediately understood and channeled their origin power into his body. With his strength replenished, Elder Hua Feng finally caught his breath. He took a deep breath, gathered the energy in his body, and poured it all into the Xian formation in front of him. Crack! A crisp cracking sound could be heard. A crack appeared on the dark blue Xian formation. "Let's go!" With Elder Hua Feng's order, the elders behind him immediately rushed out. "Chu Yu! Quick!" He could only barely open this crack for a short period of time, so he had to do it as soon as possible. Chu Luyue didn't say anything and quickly followed. The last one to come out was Elder Hua Feng. Bang! The Xian formation closed again. Elder Hua Feng was sent flying by the impact. The few of them hurriedly rushed over. "Hua Feng! Are you all right?" Elder Hua Feng struggled to stand up and shook his head. "Don't worry, I'm fine." As he spoke, he looked at Chu Luyue and couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Good boy. You've done a great service today. If it weren't for you accidentally opening this Xian formation, we might not have been able to open it today." Digression, updated at about 12:00 mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1335. Chu Luyue blinked his eyes, and there seemed to be a smile in his dark jade-like eyes. "It's all thanks to you that we were able to come out." Elder Hua Feng patted the snow off his body and looked at the dark blue Xian formation that had been closed again. He still felt shocked. He sighed. "If you hadn't remembered that Xian formation, I'm afraid that I wouldn't have been able to solve this level even if I had another month. Although your Xian formation is broken, it's still very useful. Especially the few places where you made mistakes." It was the seemingly messy pattern that woke him up. He followed that train of thought and tried to solve the Xian formation, and he succeeded. "Kid, you are really our lucky star." Elder Hua Feng was really convinced. Not only was this kid lucky, but the people who were with him always seemed to be lucky as well. This was probably the physique of a born lucky star. Originally, he was about to give up, but who would have thought that there would be a sudden turn of events? Chu Luyue pursed his lips and smiled. "Elder, you flatter me. No matter what, it would be best if I could help you." The other elders also heaved a sigh of relief at this moment, and the way they looked at Chu Luyue became unprecedentedly kind. "Ha, I didn't expect that the Xian formation that Chu Yu barely drew would actually be so useful. Chu Yu, you have contributed greatly this time." "That's right. Why don't you follow Elder Hua Feng to cultivate Xian formations in the future? Otherwise, you won't be able to display such a Xian formation every time." "I think so. Anyway, you have talent, so don't waste it." After experiencing this incident, the elders had completely changed their view of Chu Luiyue. They could now see that not only did this child not cause trouble, he was also able to help at critical moments. At the very least, they owed Chu Yu half a favor this time. These words made Elder Hua Feng burst with joy. He thought to himself that after the matter in the northern region of the Great Desolate Land was over, he would definitely make this kid acknowledge him as his master. He really couldn't miss such a disciple with such potential. He had to take him away. Looking at Elder Hua Feng's enthusiastic gaze, the corner of Chu Luiyue's eyes twitched, and he calmly changed the topic. Elder, since we're out, should we go look for Elder Bo Yen and the others? As soon as he said this, he immediately reminded them. You're right. It's not good to stay here for long, let's leave as soon as possible. As Elder Hua Feng spoke, he glanced at the Xian formation again. I just don't know who exactly left behind this Xian formation. At this moment, the Xian formation split it to the point twos. And quickly, it hit twos to Tisun. Elder Hua Feng's eyes turned cold and he quickly took a few steps forward. But there was no trace left on the snow. Elder Hua Feng reprimanded. But from this, it could be seen how shrewd the person who had prepared this move was. To be two. Behind him, an elder said with a frown. This was actually what they had been worried about. Elder Hua Feng raised his eyes and looked forward. How was he going to find them in the vast snowfield? At the same time, somewhere in the northern part of the Great Desolate Land, a figure quickly flashed across the snow. Unlike the others, he was walking half an inch above the surface of the snow. As a result, wherever he passed, the surface of the snow was as smooth as before, not leaving a single trace behind. Then, he stood still somewhere and slapped the ground with his palm. Snowflakes flew everywhere. The frozen and dark ground was revealed. He took out something and knocked it on the ground 3 times. Dong dong dong. After 3 muffled sounds, an entrance to the underground suddenly appeared. Without hesitation, he leaped up and instantly vanished from the ground. Not long after, a cold wind blew and snowflakes fell, silently burying the place. After walking underground, there was a long flight of stairs. On the walls on both sides of the stairs, there were candles. The pale flames made the long and narrow tunnel seem even darker and more cramped, making it hard to breathe. However, the man seemed to be used to it. His footsteps did not stop as he continued to walk down. About a quarter of an hour later, he finally arrived at a hall below. There was no one in the hall, but in the 4 corners of the hall, there was a lantern placed there. The light shone through, illuminating the mysterious reliefs on the walls and ceiling. In the middle was a huge bronze mirror. At the edge of the bronze mirror, there was a layer of blood, making it look exceptionally terrifying. This scene caused the atmosphere in the hall to become extremely heavy and oppressive. The man quickly walked to the bronze mirror and knelt down on one knee. Master, someone has broken the netherworld formation. As soon as he finished speaking, the blood at the edge of the bronze mirror suddenly flowed slowly towards the middle. Soon, the mirror was completely covered by this blood color. At a glance, it looked like a surging sea of blood. A low and hoarse voice came out from it. Oh. He's here. Master, it doesn't seem to be that person. The man kneeling on the ground lowered his head even more. It's an elder of Lingshao College. If I'm not wrong, his strength should be at the level of a great mystic emperor teacher. A great mystic emperor teacher. How long did he use this? 4 hours. As soon as the man finished speaking, the sea of blood in the bronze mirror seemed to surge. A moment later, a laugh came out. When did a great mystic emperor teacher break the netherworld formation so quickly? Everything this subordinate said is true. Cold sweat appeared on the forehead of the man on the ground. Keep an eye on him first and see what other abilities he has. Also, what about the others? Master, other than a dozen people who escaped, the rest of Lingxiao College have already been controlled. The man in the bronze mirror paused for a moment, his tone becoming especially dangerous. Escaped. A dozen. Bang! The man kneeling on the ground immediately kowtowed fiercely in fear and trepidation. Master, Bo Yan and the rest are really cunning. This subordinate was careless and this subordinate. It's all this subordinate's fault. Please punish me, Master. Go and investigate. None of these people from Lingxiao College can be let off. Yes. Yes. The man kowtowed a few more times in panic before getting up and leaving in fear and trepidation. However, just as he took a few steps, another voice came from behind him. Where's Mu Qinghe? The man stopped in his tracks and turned around hesitantly with a conflicted expression. This. Master, previously he didn't listen to your orders and insisted on staying in Tianling. Isn't he already an abandoned pawn? You. An abandoned pawn has its uses. Since he's unwilling to come back, then invite him back. Yes. After his figure disappeared, the blood on the bronze mirror slowly receded. In just a short while, it returned to its original appearance. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1336. After Chu Luyue and the others rested on the spot for a short while, they continued on their journey. The green jade token was almost useless, so it was put away by Elder Huafeng. Other than that, they had no other way to contact the others in the academy. Thus, after some discussion, they finally decided to head to the hinterland of the northern region of the primordial world. The place where the heavenly square cauldron was most likely to appear should be there. If they walked there, even if they couldn't find the people from the academy, they would be able to meet people from other aristocratic families and sections. Perhaps he could find out what had happened from them. After the previous incident, they were all on high alert, afraid that the same thing would happen again. With their current strength, they might not be able to withstand it if they made a few more trips. Fortunately, everything seemed to have calmed down. After walking for a long distance, Chu Luyue looked at the sky. The lead gray clouds were thick and piled together, and the world was dark. However, there were no signs of darkness. It was rumored that the northern region of the primordial world was in a special location. Coupled with the changes over the past 10,000 years, the climate was extremely different from other places. The day here was extremely long, and the night was only 4 hours long. The day was cold, and the night was even colder. It was indeed difficult for ordinary people to stay in such a bitter and cold place. As they walked, they suddenly heard someone talking in front of them. However, because they were quite far away, they couldn't hear what they were saying. Looking up, they could vaguely see a group of people walking forward against the wind and snow in a white snowfield. Their direction was the same as Chu Luyue and the others, but perhaps because they were slower, Chu Luyue and the others caught up. Who are those people? An elder tried his best to look over. Judging from their clothes, they don't look like ordinary people. They should be from a first-rate aristocratic family, right? Chu Luyue followed his gaze and looked over. There were about a dozen people, including elders and young men and women. At this moment, the people in front seemed to have noticed something and turned around. Who are you? One of the elders was the first to speak warily. Elder Huafeng's dantian was filled with anger. Lingxiao College's Huafeng is here. A low and powerful voice spread far and wide. In the Divine Ruins world, the name of Lingxiao College was very resounding. Except for a few who had old grudges with them, most of the other first-rate families and sects had to give them some face. That was why Elder Huafeng dared to boldly report his wealth. Sure enough, after hearing his words, the other party's attitude immediately changed. Elder Huafeng. The other party responded, and his tone seemed to be quite surprised. Just as Elder Huafeng was about to ask about their identity, he suddenly heard a young woman walking over. As she walked, she shouted joyfully, "Elder Huafeng, so it's you." Elder Huafeng and the others were still a little puzzled at first, but as the woman approached and they saw her face clearly, they immediately revealed happy expressions. Shi Ruier was out of breath as she walked, her face slightly flushed. "Yes, I am. Greetings, elders." As she spoke, Shi Ruier bowed politely to Huafeng and the others. In the end, she noticed that there was Chu Luiyue at the back and was stunned for a moment. However, she quickly came to her senses and asked with uncertainty, "What's wrong? Are you junior brother Chu Yu?" When Chu Luiyue heard the elder call out her name, she already remembered this person's identity. Shi Ruier, the second miss of the Meteor sect. When the Academy wanted to summon people to the Dark Feather Abyss, Shi Ruier was among them. Although the two of them didn't know each other, they had indeed met a few times. Chu Luiyue greeted her with a smile. "Greetings, senior sister Shi Ruier." Shi Ruier looked at her curiously, but her eyes were very restrained and did not have any intention of offending her. "I heard that senior brother Rongxiu is personally teaching you now." Chu Luiyue was a little surprised that she would ask this question first, but she still nodded honestly. It is Chu Yu's fortune to be able to receive such concern from senior brother Rongxiu. Shi Ruier couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. He isn't willing to teach just anyone. To be able to make him value you so much, you naturally have your own ability. Besides, I also saw the battle between you and Jean Lei that day. You don't have to be too humble." As she spoke, she looked around and asked with some surprise, "Why didn't Rongxiu and the others come with you?" Elder Huafeng shook his head. "Rongxiu had something to do, so he didn't come with us this time." "I see." A hint of surprise flashed across Shi Ruiyer's eyes. According to her understanding of Rongxiu, he would definitely come to this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. She didn't expect him to not come this time. What about the other elders? Did you guys go separately? Shi Ruier asked curiously. The expressions of Elder Huafeng and the others changed slightly. Shi Ruier immediately sensed something, and the smile on her face froze for an instant. "We're also looking for them." Elder Huafeng thought for a moment and chose to tell the truth. Lingxiao College and the Meteor sect had always been in contact and had a good relationship with each other. If he told Shi Ruier, they might be able to help. What do you mean?" Although she had already guessed that the situation might not be good, Shi Ruier still didn't expect Elder Huafeng to say such a thing. After that, Elder Huafeng briefly explained the situation to her. Shi Ruiyer's expression gradually became serious. "So now we don't know where they are. We can only look for them slowly." Shi Ruier frowned. "We've been here for about 2 days, but we haven't seen Elder Bo Yen and the others." Elder Huafeng and the others had already expected this result, but they still couldn't hide their disappointment when they heard this. "Elder Huafeng, since it's like this, why don't we move together and look for them together? One more person is always one more force, right?" Hearing Shi Ruiyer's suggestion, the elders naturally didn't refuse. Now that they were alone and weak, wanting to rely on their own strength to find so many people in the academy, there was simply no hope at all. The remaining people of the Meteor sect naturally agreed. After all, Shi Ruier had the highest status among them. Moreover, the Meteor sect and Lingxiao College had a good relationship. Due to various considerations, they should help this time. After a short discussion, the group began to move forward again. Chu Luiyue happened to walk behind Shi Ruier to the right. She thought for a moment and asked, "Senior Shi Ruier, have you seen the heavenly square cauldron in the past 2 days? Shuruya shook her head, no. We haven't met anyone in the past 2 days. Chu Luiyue was a little disappointed, but she still politely thanked her. Shuruya stared at her for a while and suddenly smiled. Chu Yu, Rongxiu rarely treats someone so well. The last one was, digression. Originally, I wanted to update 9 times today, but my period came. Moreover, I might have sat from morning to night, and my waist hurts so much that I couldn't sit still. Therefore, I stopped updating. I'll update at noon tomorrow, and I'll start updating at 5 times. Because I have to go out in 2 days, I won't be able to stabilize the updates for the time being. After a few days of adjustment, I'll work hard to save more chapters. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1337. Rue, Elder Hua Feng suddenly interrupted her. Rue turned around. Elder Hua Feng smiled faintly. I heard that the meteor sect recently obtained a new divine beast. The topic changed so suddenly that everyone could see Elder Hua Feng's intention. Rui's eyes moved slightly as she nodded with a smile. Yes. My father recently hunted a legendary 3-eyed eagle outside. Chu Liuyue's heart skipped a beat. Elder Hua Feng obviously didn't want Rue to talk about Rongxiu's past. It should be related to her. In addition, she didn't expect that the meteor sect would also obtain a legendary 3-eyed eagle. What a coincidence. The legendary 3-eyed eagle has a noble bloodline. It's arrogant and fierce. It almost never interacts with the human race. It has never appeared in public in the past 1,000 years. It seems that your father has put in a lot of effort this time. Rue smiled brightly. You're right. That legendary 3-eyed eagle is indeed very difficult to tame. My father has been torturing it for 3 whole months. Now, it has finally become a little more docile. Chu Luiyue suddenly felt a slight fluctuation in her body. It seemed that the legendary 3-eyed eagle had become a little anxious after hearing her words. Chu Luiyue comforted it in her heart, and it gradually calmed down. After all, they were of the same race. How could she not care at all? Moreover, the eagle in her body was once the eagle lord of the legendary 3-eyed eagle race. Another elder suddenly asked, "What's the matter?" Rue, if I remember correctly, you don't seem to have a contract with a magical beast yet? Rue was a warrior, but she had never contracted a magical beast. It was reasonable to say that with her talent and background, it was more than enough for her to have a divine beast. However, she didn't choose to contract with any magical beast until she left the academy. Rue pursed her lips and smiled. I already have one now. Before coming here, my father gave me the legendary 3-eyed eagle. Elder Hua Feng and the others were surprised. However, after thinking about it, they felt that it was reasonable. Rue was the second young lady of the meteor sect. Therefore, he doted on her a lot. Therefore, it was normal for her to receive such treatment. No wonder. I have to congratulate you then. Oh right, you seem to have broken through again. Rue generously nodded and admitted it with a smile. If it wasn't for this, father wouldn't have given me the legendary 3-eyed eagle. Elder Hua Feng and the others glanced at each other. It seemed that Rue's position as the heir was basically secured. Right at this moment, the sound of hurried footsteps came from the front of the crowd. There seems to be someone running towards us. The white-browed old man standing beside Rue said. Alone? Rue asked curiously. The old man with white eyebrows took a closer look and nodded with certainty. Alone. That was strange. In this damned place of danger, everyone was in groups, or at least in groups of 3 to 5. It was impossible for them to move alone. What was the difference between this and seeking death? It seems to be a woman. She should be alone. The old man with white eyebrows looked at Shirue inquiringly. Second young lady, this person, should we save her or not? Actually, he was inclined to not save her. Who knew where the other party came from? What if she was killed in the end after saving her out of kindness? Everyone's life was hanging by a thread in the northern territory of the primitive wasteland. What couldn't they do? Shirue thought for a while and shook her head. No need to pay attention to her. She paused for a while and said again. If she tries to get close, just deal with her directly. Yes. Her tone was very light. It was as if she was saying that the weather was bad today. However, this sentence determined the life and death of a person. However, the others present didn't have any objections. Everyone knew that kindness at such a time could very well cost them their lives. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but look at Shirue again. This second young lady, who was rumored to be the heir, was indeed swift and decisive. Just as the group was about to walk around to the other side, the woman in the distance seemed to have seen them. After a short pause, she quickly ran over to them. The old man with white eyebrows took a step forward. Just as he was about to stop her, he heard the woman suddenly shout anxiously. Elder Huafeng! Save me! The group stopped in their tracks. Elder Huafeng frowned and looked back. This voice. It actually sounded a little familiar. Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows and looked at the other party with interest. What a coincidence! Who would have thought that the first person they met in the northern territory of the primitive wasteland would be Jiang Jiwan? At this moment, the other elders also recognized her one after another. Huafeng, this voice, it sounds like Jiang Jiwan. It sounds like it to me too. It should be her, right? Why doesn't this face look like it? Elder Huafeng walked forward. Shirue suddenly advised. Elder, be careful. It was really suspicious for her to suddenly appear in this world of ice and snow. Even if it was really Jiang Jiwan, they couldn't trust her completely. Seeing this scene, Jiang Jiwan couldn't help but bite her lips. She quickly glanced at Shirue, and a trace of resentment flashed across her eyes. It's fine, I'll go take a look first. Elder Huafeng knew that Shirue was being kind, but he still chose to walk over. After all, she was a student of his academy. How could he not save her? Moreover, Jiang Jiwan had set off with Elder Bo Yen and the others. She might know something. Shirue could only say. Then we'll go with you. As she spoke, she gave Elder Bai Mei and the others a look. Everyone immediately followed. Elder Huafeng couldn't help but laugh. Rue, after so long, you're still as meticulous as before. Shirue's lips curved slightly. It's better to be safe than sorry. As they spoke, the group finally arrived in front of Jiang Jiwan. Jiang Jiwan looked at Elder Huafeng and the others excitedly. Her eyes were red. Elder, please save me. Everyone was stunned when they saw that unfamiliar face. Elder Huafeng pointed at her and asked. Jiang Jiwan. Your face. Jiang Ziyuan suddenly remembered something and hurriedly explained, that's right. Oh, this is a mask. I used it to hide my appearance. As she spoke, her hand fumbled around her chin for a while before slowly taking off a mask as thin as a cicada's wing. The face under the mask was indeed Jiang Jiwan. However, at this moment, for some reason, an inch-long scratch appeared on her left cheek. It seemed to have been slashed by some kind of sharp weapon during a fierce battle. The originally beautiful face was ruined by this scar, and it became a little terrifying. Coupled with her haggard expression and pale lips, she looked even more frightening. Noticing everyone's gaze, Jiang Ji-won remembered the scar on her face and hurriedly reached out to cover it. However, when he came into contact with the wound, his heart trembled and he felt extremely uncomfortable. Elder Hua Feng frowned. Jiang Ji-won, what happened to you? Didn't you come with Elder Bo Yen and the others? How did you end up like this? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1338. Facing Elder Hua Feng's series of questions, Jiang Ji-won was speechless as tears flowed from her eyes. Anyone who saw it would think that she had encountered something bad and suffered grievances. However, Shi Rui seemed to be indifferent to this and asked calmly, "We're not standing here to watch you cry. Answer Elder Hua Feng's questions and tell us everything clearly. Only then can we help you, right?" Jiang Ji-won felt as if a fishbone was stuck in her throat. She didn't know whether to cry or not. Tears hung on her face, making her look very awkward. Chu Luiyue glanced at Shi Rui calmly. Previously, she thought that it was an illusion, but now she was sure that Shi Rui didn't like Jiang Ji-won. It could even be said that she hated her. Moreover, it was the undisguised kind. And Jiang Ji-won seemed to be quite afraid of her. After being said that, she didn't refute and didn't even dare to show her dissatisfaction. I really don't know what kind of grudge there is between the two of them. We came to the northern region of the Great Desolate Land together. Not long after we left the teleportation formation, we were ambushed. Who was the one who did it? Elder Hua Feng asked immediately. Jiang Ji-won shook her head in horror. No one. It was the Xian formation. Elder Hua Feng and the others looked at each other and thought to themselves, as expected. That Xian formation was very powerful. Elder Bo Yen and the others worked together and barely managed to break it open. However, only a portion of them managed to escape in time. The rest, a trace of fear flashed through her eyes. At that time, the ground suddenly collapsed and after they all disappeared, the ground closed again. I don't know how they are now. As she spoke, she couldn't help but cry again. However, as if she was afraid that Shi Rui would continue, she hurriedly turned her head to the side and wiped it away. Elder Hua Feng asked in a deep voice, "How many escaped?" Jiang Ji-won's eyes flashed and she said hesitantly, "About 56, about 56, there were more than 10 elders and 34 students. However, I didn't manage to see the exact number at that time." Everyone's heart sank. 50 to 60, more than 300 people from High Heaven Academy had come. This time, more than half of them were lost, and their fates were unknown. If something really happened, it would be a huge blow to Lingxiao College. "Since you escaped with these people, why are you alone now?" Shi Rui asked calmly. Jiang Ji-won shrunk back and lowered her eyes. She looked embarrassed and sad. I don't know. We were originally together. Elder Bo Yen said that he would think of a way to find those people, but we were soon attacked again. It was during that accident that I was separated from them. I don't know where the others are." As she spoke, she wiped her eyes. "If I hadn't met you elders, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to walk out of here." Her pitiful appearance was in line with what she had experienced. Elder Hua Feng and the others looked solemn. They thought that if they found Jiang Ji-won, they would be able to find some clues. However, it seemed that this path was not going to work. The other party was well prepared. They didn't even show their faces, but they had already tricked so many people from Lingxiao College. Jiang Ji-won alone might not be able to say anything. It would be very difficult to find the others. "Where did you run from?" Shi Rui stared at Jiang Ji-won and asked, "This place is covered in snow." Every step you take consumes a lot of energy. You shouldn't have walked far by yourself, right? If they followed Jiang Ji-won's escape route, they might be able to find something. Jiang Ji-won was stunned and immediately bit her lip. I was busy running and only knew how to run forward. I don't know how many times I changed directions and how far I ran. The snowfield here is endless. I really can't remember. Between heaven and earth, the scenery was dull and monotonous snow, as if there was no border. There wasn't even a reference point here, so it was naturally difficult to determine the direction and location. Shi Ruier frowned and didn't say anything else. Elder Hua Feng said to an elder beside him. Go and help her take a look at her injuries first. We'll continue after she's better. Jiang Ji-won's face was filled with gratitude. Thank you, elder. Shi Ruier turned to look at Elder Hua Feng. Elder, can I have a word with you? Elder Hua Feng nodded. The two of them walked to the side. Jiang Ji-won glanced over and frowned slightly. It had been so long, but Shi Ruier still couldn't stand her. I wonder what method she's going to use to deal with me this time. However, she seems to have brought a lot of people from the meteor sect this time, so I can't resist at all. Suddenly, her gaze froze. Only then did she see Chu Luyue standing behind the crowd. Chu Yu. Why are you here? Jiang Ji-won couldn't help but exclaim in shock. Didn't Chu Yu say that he wasn't feeling well when we went out previously? Why is he here now? Chu Luyue smiled faintly. Why? Are you surprised that I'm here, senior sister Jiang? Jiang Ji-won suddenly thought of something and glanced at the elder who was treating her wounds. Elder, you brought Chu Yu here. The elder didn't even raise his head as he replied, yes. Jiang Ji-won couldn't help but say. How can this be? Why not? The elder took out some medicinal herbs and applied them to the wound on Jiang Ji-won's arm as he said with a smile. Chu Yu had already passed the examination before, but he had something to do at the last minute, so he couldn't make it. This time, we might as well bring him along. But, Jiang Ji-won wanted to say something, but when she saw the smile on the elder's face, she suddenly realized something and swallowed the rest of her words. She quickly looked at the expressions of the other elders and found that they seemed to have a good attitude towards Chu Yu. She retracted her gaze, but endless doubts surged in her heart. What's going on? These elders obviously came after us, and they shouldn't have brought any other students. Why did they bring Chu Yu? Don't they feel that bringing such a person along is a burden? Jiang Ji-won had too many questions. However, she was used to observing people's expressions. At this moment, seeing that everyone's attitude towards Chu Luyue was very good, she naturally knew what to say and what not to say. Especially, Shi Ruier was beside her. She really thought that she was going to die, but who knew that she would be able to survive and meet Elder Hua Feng and the others. This time, she had to be with them no matter what. On the other side, Shi Ruier and Elder Hua Feng had already walked to the side. Elder Hua Feng had even specially set up a barrier to prevent others from eavesdropping. His intuition told him that Shi Ruier was going to say something. Sure enough, after the two of them stood still, Shi Ruier went straight to the point. Elder Hua Feng, are you really going to bring Jiang Ji-won along? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1339. Elder Hua Feng sighed. Ruier, I know you don't like her, but she's a student of the academy after all. Moreover, she's the only one among the 300 people who came to the northern region of the Great Desolate Land. No matter how you look at it, we can't just abandon her here. Elder Hua Feng, I don't agree to bring her along because of personal reasons, but, Shi Ruier paused. You said it yourself. There were more than 300 people from the academy before. Why is she the only one here? Not to mention the elders, even if it's the students, there should be many stronger than her, right? In my opinion, it's really suspicious for her to appear alone. Elder Huafeng stroked his beard. Rui, your worries aren't unreasonable, but I'm afraid we don't have any other choice now, right? If there's really something wrong with her, do you think it's safer to let her go or to keep her in front of us? With so many of them here, it couldn't be that they couldn't even deal with Jiang Ji1, right? Hearing this, Shi Rui pondered for a moment and nodded. What you said makes sense. Then I'll listen to you. However, once I find out that there's a problem with her, I won't be merciful. Elder Huafeng heaved a sigh of relief and smiled. Good. You've always done things appropriately. The elders trust you. Shi Rui also smiled. However, I don't quite understand why you don't like Jiang Ji1 so much. I remember that you returned to the meteor sect a few months after she came to the academy, right? There was basically no interaction between the two of them. He really didn't know where this estrangement came from. Shi Rui tucked her hair behind her ear and smiled faintly. Actually, it's nothing. It's just that she did something that I don't like. So. But don't worry, as long as she's obedient along the way, I won't do anything to her. She would dirty her hands for nothing. Not to mention a mere Jiang Ji1, she didn't even care about the entire Immortal Water Mausoleum. Elder Huafeng saw her honest expression and knew that she was telling the truth, so he was relieved. That's good, that's good. After the two finished chatting, they quickly went back. At this time, the injuries on Jiang Ji1's body were basically treated. After taking a pill, her face finally regained some color. She stood obediently in the crowd, minimizing her presence. The group of people ran in the direction she had given them. Chu Yu, I heard that your contracted magical beast is a red-tailed phoenix. Shi Rui seemed to like Chu Luyue very much and was also very curious about her. After walking a distance, she started chatting with Chu Yu again. Chu Luyue smiled and nodded. Yes. Elder Huafeng, who was walking in front, rubbed his nose. That's great. Let's spar when we have time. How about it? Shi Rui's eyes lit up. Ever since I contracted with this beast, I've never really fought with anyone. The fight between the legendary three-eyed eagle and the red-tailed red phoenix was naturally very interesting. Chu Luyue thought for a moment and said, Dumpling has always been lazy. Recently, she has been sleeping a lot and can't get up. This matter. Why don't we talk about it later? Shi Rui felt a little regretful, but this kind of thing couldn't be forced. Alright. I just feel that it's quite lonely. I don't know why, but since 1,000 years ago, there hasn't been a legendary three-eyed eagle in the Divine Ruins world. It was an extremely coincidental thing that Father found this one. I don't know when I can find another one. Legendary three-eyed eagle. Jiang Ji1, who was silent, couldn't help but say, there's a Yanyan Tower in the Yanyan Tower. There's one in Yuntian. Senior Sister Shi Rui, why don't you go there and have a match? Digression, that's all for the morning. I'll take a break. 6 p.m. It's so big. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1340. Shi Rui looked at her in surprise. Yuntian Tower. Jiang Ji1's lips twitched, but there was no trace of a smile in her eyes. Yes. You don't know yet, right? The princess consort of the Yuntian Tower also has a legendary three-eyed eagle. Coincidentally, she also has a red-tailed phoenix. Two contracted magical beasts. And both of them are mythical beasts. How is that possible? Shi Rui's first reaction was to shake her head. Magical beasts were proud and would never choose to serve the same master. Moreover, both of them were mythical beasts. I don't dare to lie in front of you. You can find out if it's true or not. Jiang Jiwan was furious at the mention of this matter. If not for the fact that there were two mythical beasts in Shangguanyu, how could she have lost the battle? Until now, she still did not know how Shangguanyu did it. Shi Rui was surprised to hear Jiang Jiwan's words. There was no need for Jiang Jiwan to lie about this matter. After all, she could just go to the Yuntian Tower and ask around to find out. So, it's true. If it's true, I'll have to go there when I have the chance in the future. Shi Rui thought for a while and suddenly laughed. You're indeed the one chosen by Rong Xiu to be the princess consort. You don't seem as bad as the rumors in the academy said, right? Jiang Jiwan, what do you think? Jiang Jiwan's face froze. She was obviously mocking her. This was because she was the one who spread the news about the princess consort of the Yuntian Tower. Of course, she would not say anything good about her. As the news spread, it became worse. Jiang Jiwan forced a smile. You're right, senior sister. I don't know what's going on in the academy these past few years, but there's been a trend of evil. Some people, whose talent and strength are not as good as others, don't think about how to work hard to surpass their opponents. Instead, they think of ways to slander their opponents. They even want to ruin their opponent's reputation and drag them down together. Shi Rui sneered. If I have the time, I'll really have to do something about it. Jiang Jiwan was speechless. Her face alternated between red and white. Chu Luiyue watched from the side and raised his eyebrows slightly. TSK. It was rare for her to see Jiang Jiwan being so humiliated in front of someone. Even when they were at the Yuntian Tower, she acted as if she was the owner of the place. However, when she was in front of Shi Rui, she behaved with her tail between her legs, as if she was afraid that Shi Rui would do something to her. If it weren't for the fact that this was not a good time, Chu Luiyue really wanted to ask her what was going on. By the way, Jiang Jiwan, you said that after you escaped, you were besieged again. Because of that, you and the others split up, right? Jiang Jiwan nodded nervously, as if she was still afraid of what happened before. Then why don't you tell us what happened at that time? Jiang Jiwan stammered. I was too nervous at that time and only cared about escaping. I don't know what happened, and I don't really remember. Then tell us in detail about your escape. Shi Rui emphasized the word escape with a faint smile. The more details you tell us, the more helpful it will be for us. Don't tell me, you're not even willing to do this. Jiang Jiwan felt guilty. Her mind was spinning quickly. This Shi Rui's eyes were very sharp. She had indeed been attacked twice, and she had indeed escaped during the chaos. However, the truth of the matter was very different from what she had described to Elder Huafeng and the others. If she said it, no. She absolutely could not say it. Everything that happened at that time could not be known by them. Otherwise, senior sister, you've misunderstood. Why would I be unwilling? My mind is still a little confused. Let me think about it carefully. It's good to think about it more. Shi Rui chuckled. It's not too late to say it after you've sorted it out and thought about what to say. These words sounded awkward, but Jiang Jiwan couldn't find any words to refute, so she could only suppress her anger. She lowered her eyes, and her pale face looked haggard and pitiful. No one saw the resentment that flashed through her eyes. Shi Rui had been targeting her for more than a day or two. It wasn't that Jiang Jiwan didn't hate her. However, Shi Rui was the true second miss of the meteor sect. Moreover, she was the kind of person who had been groomed as the successor since she was young. Her status was noble, and her talent and strength were not inferior to hers. The disparity between the two sides was too great, so she could only endure it. Fortunately, she left a few months later. She didn't expect to meet her again after a few years. Yes, Rue is right. You should recuperate your body and sort out your thoughts. Then, try your best to explain the matter clearly. This way, we might be able to find some clues and find Bo Yen and the others. Elder Huafeng also agreed with Shi Rui's words and added. Jiang Jiwan could only force a smile. Yes, Ziyuan understands. After walking for a while, the sky was completely dark. The temperature at night was extremely cold. If they stayed in the same place, they would need to consume a large amount of force to maintain their body temperature. Moreover, if they were not careful, they might fall asleep forever. Therefore, everyone chose to continue walking. In the dark night sky, there was no moon, only a few stars twinkling. Everyone walked forward in silence. Suddenly, Taizu's voice sounded in Chu Liyue's ears. Chu Liyue was a little surprised. Taizu. What's wrong? Taizu paused for a moment and said, I feel that this place is very familiar. His voice was very soft, but in Chu Liyue's ears, it was like a clap of thunder. She knew that if it wasn't for something, Taizu would never suddenly say such a thing. Do you remember something? Chu Liyue asked softly in her heart. Not yet, but I should have been here before. In fact, he had this feeling since he first arrived at the northern region of the primordial world and came out of the teleportation formation. As they continued to move towards the hinterland, this feeling became stronger and stronger. So much so that he could finally say it out loud with certainty. Chu Liyue was a little puzzled. Are you sure? The great ancestor gave a brief response. I think I know how to get here. Chu Liyue suddenly stopped in her tracks. Chu Yu, what's wrong? Elder Huafeng had been walking beside Chu Liyue. Seeing that she had suddenly stopped, he couldn't help but turn his head and look at her curiously. Chu Liyue came back to her senses and smiled. It's nothing. I just feel a little tired. Elder Huafeng exhaled, and white mist drifted out of his mouth. This place was indeed too cold, and it was indeed too strenuous to walk. I think everyone is a little tired. Why don't we sit down and rest for an hour? This suggestion was agreed to by everyone. In fact, after running around for an entire day, they could not hold on any longer. Everyone cleared out an empty space in the snow, sat on the ground, and began to regulate their breathing. The only good thing about this place was that the origin power was quite dense. Chu Liyue also sat down and closed her eyes. Taizu, please continue. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1341. This place shouldn't be like this in the past. Taizu's tone was a little uncertain. I know which direction is safer to go next, but I don't remember what's over there at all. Also, the range that I can sense at the moment is only about 10 miles around here. I'll probably only know about the places further away when I get there. Perhaps it's because too much time has passed, or perhaps my soul is still incomplete. In short, there's really not much that I can remember. Taizu hesitated for a moment before saying, you can listen to this for now. Don't take it completely seriously. What if I remember wrongly? Besides, even if I really came here, it was 1,000 years ago. The world has changed, and everything is hard to say. Chu Liyue said, thank you for your guidance, Taizu. You understands. Then, where do you think we should go now? Taizu said a direction. Chu Luiwe slowly opened her eyes, and a hint of contemplation flashed through her eyes. What great ancestor said should still have a certain degree of truth. Since he had said so much, what's the harm in giving it a try? After all, even Elder Hua Feng and the others were helpless in this damned place. Half an hour passed quickly. The group stood up and prepared to leave. Elder Hua Feng looked at Jiang Jiwan. Where should we go next? Jiang Jiwan looked and pointed in a direction. It seems to be that way. The night was dark. Fortunately, the snow on the snowfield reflected a faint glow, and they could barely see the direction. Let's go. As soon as Elder Hua Feng gave the order, everyone started walking in that direction. Wait. Chu Luiwe suddenly said. Elder Hua Feng turned to look at her. Chu Yu, what's wrong? Chu Luiwe crossed her arms with one hand and held her chin with the other. After a moment of thought, she said, I don't think it's that direction. Let's go over there. As she spoke, she pointed in another direction. Everyone was stunned and looked at each other. What? What's going on? Only Jiang Jiwan's expression changed slightly after seeing this. Chu Yu, what are you talking about? Elder Hua Feng couldn't help but laugh. Could it be that you want to go that way? Chu Luiwe blinked. Yeah, I don't know why, but I feel that it might be safer there. Seeing that Chu Luiwe didn't seem to be joking, Elder Hua Feng's expression froze. But Jiang Jiwan said it was over there. Jiang Jiwan might not be right. Didn't she just say that she couldn't remember anything? Who knows if she'll remember in the opposite direction? Shi Rui suddenly spoke up and raised her chin at Chu Luiwe. Chu Yu, tell me, why do you want to change directions? Chu Luiwe paused. No reason. It's just my intuition. Shi Rui stared into her eyes for a while and then nodded. Okay, then we'll go in your direction. No. Jiang Jiwan suddenly raised her voice, and it was so sharp that it was a little ear-piercing. Seeing that everyone was looking at her, she realized that she had lost her composure and her voice became weak again. I remember it very clearly. It's over there. The northern part of the primordial world is filled with danger. If we go in the wrong direction, the consequences will be unimaginable. Senior Sister Jiang, I just said that we can go over there. Why are you so agitated? Chu Luiwe raised her eyebrows. Jiang Jiwan's back was covered in cold sweat as she forced a smile. No, I'm just worried about everyone's safety. After all, there are so many of us. If something happens, who will bear the responsibility? Hearing her say this, the other elders also deeply agreed. Chu Yu, Jiang Jiwan's words make sense. In this place, we really can't walk around casually. No matter what, she escaped alone. There shouldn't be a problem with the route. Let's go that way. That's right. Who knows what traps are hidden under this vast snowfield? It's better not to take risks, okay? Hearing this, Chu Luiwe wasn't angry. Instead, she smiled slightly. Of course, she could understand why they thought and said that. If it wasn't for Taizu, she wouldn't have jumped out and said that. However, it was useless to tell them. Chu Luiwe turned to look at Elder Hua Feng. Elder, do you believe me? Elder Hua Feng was stunned. Of course I believe you. Suddenly, he paused and narrowed his eyes. Chu Yu was so persistent. It was obvious that he didn't do it on a whim. Could it be that he knew something? He had the crimson gold heavenly phoenix by his side. Perhaps, this was actually the meaning of the crimson gold heavenly phoenix. Elder Hua Feng thought for a while and finally said, then I'll listen to you this time. Let's walk over there and take a look. Elder Hua Feng. Jiang Ji-won looked at him in disbelief. You've really decided? This was a matter of everyone's lives. He actually believed Chu Yu's words so easily. Wasn't this too much of a joke? The other elders were also surprised. Elder Hua Feng chuckled and said, let's take a look over there first. It's not a big deal. If something really happens, we'll just come back. Everyone fell silent for a moment. What are you saying? What if we don't have the time or ability to run back? Wouldn't we all be stuck inside then? However, although Elder Hua Feng seemed to be smiling amiably, those who knew him knew that he had already made a decision. Seeing that Elder Hua Feng and Shi Rui had agreed to follow Chu Luyue, even if the rest of the people had objections, it was useless, so they simply agreed. The most anxious person was Jiang Ji-won. However, her reaction just now was too big, and it had already aroused the suspicion of Shi Rui and the others. If she forcefully objected, she was afraid that, helpless, she could only choose to tacitly agree and follow behind everyone. The group quickly headed in the direction Chu Luyue pointed. The more they walked forward, the more anxious Jiang Ji-won became. She kept thinking about how to get everyone back. However, no one spoke much, and nothing had happened, so she couldn't open her mouth. Thus, after walking for a while, a trace of white appeared on the horizon. Shi Rui couldn't help but laugh. Chu Yu, it seems that the direction you chose is indeed quite good, hula. Before he could finish his sentence, something suddenly rushed out from the snow in front of them, covering the sky and the earth as it headed straight for everyone. Digression, update at 12:00 tomorrow. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1342. Nine-tailed Blue Crow. The old man with white eyebrows standing beside Shi Rui immediately exclaimed, "Retreat!" When everyone heard this, they were all shocked and quickly retreated to the back. Nine-tailed blue crows were divine beasts. They were fierce and aggressive, and their attacks were extremely strong. Most importantly, they tended to live in groups. Once they were surrounded by nine-tailed blue crows, it would not be so easy to escape. Immediately after, the crowd saw a dense mass of people flying towards them at high speed. In just a moment, they had already rushed in front of them. Each of them was not big, and their bodies were dark grayish-green. Their black eyes were sharp and cold, and their white-sharp beaks seemed to be able to bite off a piece of meat at any time. Behind them, there were 9 long and hard feathers. Usually, they were gathered together and drooped slightly, but when they were about to attack, those feathers would stand up and spread out. Under the sunlight, they reflected a clear ray of light. It was beautiful, but also dangerous. In the vast expanse of white snow, their appearance was really very eye-catching. Everyone retreated, but they were fast, but the nine-tailed blue crows were even faster. As their wings flapped, several nine-tailed blue crows had already swept past the snow and flew over quickly. Elder Hua Feng and the others were originally standing at the front, so they were the first to bear the brunt. His expression turned stern as he quickly set up a barrier in front of him. Bang bang! Several nine-tailed blue crows slammed into the barrier. When Chu Luyue heard this sound, he could not help but turn around to take a look, and a trace of shock flashed across his eyes. Those nine-tailed blue crows seemed to not care about their lives. They retreated a little, and then charged forward with even faster and more ferocious strength. Bang! Crack! A crack instantly appeared on Elder Hua Feng's barrier. Bang! Another nine-tailed blue crow charged over with all its might. This time, the crack began to spread rapidly towards the surroundings. These nine-tailed blue crows were indeed fierce. They could clearly circle around and attack from other directions, but they did not. Instead, they stubbornly crashed into the barrier that blocked them. As divine beasts, their intelligence was already comparable to that of humans, or even higher. How could they not know that there were other ways to save energy? But they only chose to face the attack head-on. This was the ferocious temperament that was buried deep in the bones and blood. Of course, the most important thing was that they had the strength to fight head-on. The barrier shattered and Elder Hua Feng's chest tightened. He also chose to turn around and leave quickly. Although the nine-tailed black crow's explosive power is strong, its endurance is not high. After 15 minutes, if they were unable to succeed, they would leave. Elder Hua Feng hurriedly warned as he ran forward. Remember. Do not take their lives. Walking on the snowy plains for a long time had consumed a lot of energy. Their speed began to slow down. The nine-tailed black crow behind quickly followed, and in a short while, it had already rushed in front of them. Jiang Ji-won, who was originally standing at the back, became the safest person when she fled. However, she didn't even have the time to rejoice when she heard a gust of wind sweep past her ears. After that, a nine-tailed azure crow flew before her eyes and blocked her path. The nine-tailed blue crow stared at her indifferently, as if she wanted to eat her alive. Jiang Ji-won's heart skipped a beat. Chi! The nine-tailed blue crow charged straight at her. Jiang Ji-won subconsciously took out a sword and slashed down fiercely. However, the nine-tailed blue crow was even faster and easily clamped the sword with its claws. Jiang Ji-won's heart sank. At this moment, the nine-tailed blue crow pulled out the long sword in her hand and threw it out. Jiang Ji-won immediately ran in another direction. However, she no longer had any strength, so how could she be a match for the nine-tailed blue crow? Plop! Jiang Ji-won fell to the ground, and most of her body sank into the thick snow. The sound of something tearing through the air came from behind. Jiang Ji-won turned around in fear. The nine-tailed blue crow was already approaching. It was about to tear her face apart. The others also saw this scene. However, because of the distance between them and Jiang Ji-won, in order to avoid the nine-tailed blue crow, she ran to the side in a panic. The distance between them was getting farther and farther. Shi Rui frowned. The next moment, a huge black figure appeared above her head. It was her contracted magical beast, a three-eyed eagle that had just reached adulthood. Go! Shi Rui ordered. The next moment, the three-eyed eagle's figure instantly disappeared before her eyes. At the same time, a sharp cry quickly spread. The cry that was filled with pressure stunned all the nine-tailed blue crows present. In comparison, the three-eyed eagle was more noble than the nine-tailed blue crow. The powerful bloodline power in its bones and blood caused these nine-tailed blue crows to feel a trace of reverence and hesitation. Including the one in front of Jiang Ji-won. Hearing this sound, its movements hesitated for a moment. Seeing this scene, Jiang Ji-won was delighted and quickly attacked. She threw out something. It was an iron-colored metal tube that looked ordinary. Chi! Several lancet flying knives that were as thin as cicadas' wings suddenly flew out. These flying knives were extremely fast, and she chose the most important moment. The nine-tailed blue crow in front of her wanted to dodge, but it was too late. Countless flying knives pierced through its body. The unbelievably sharp weapons cut through feathers and flesh, making an extremely soft sound that made one's scalp tingle. Chi! Several streaks of bright red blood spurted out and flew onto Jiang Ji-won's face. Bang! The nine-tailed blue crow fell to the ground, and the white snow below quickly melted with blood, dyeing it red. As for its body, it was practically torn apart. In the blink of an eye, there was no sound. The surroundings suddenly quieted down. Everyone looked at this scene with their mouths agape and their expressions shocked. Even those nine-tailed blue crows were all frozen in place. Only Jiang Ji-won was half lying in the snow, one hand on the ground, the other hand holding the iron-colored metal tube tightly. She gritted her teeth and panted heavily. Her chest rose and fell violently, and her eyes were wide open as she stared at the dead nine-tailed blue crow in front of her. A hint of joy flashed in her eyes. Her originally pale and haggard face was splashed with blood, and she looked inexplicably cold, causing people to feel fear in their hearts. After a while, as if sensing everyone's gaze, she slowly raised her head. Before she could announce her victory, she heard the white-browed elder's angry rebuke. "You're crazy." Jiang Ji-won was stunned. This explosive shout was like a head-on blow that made her dizzy. She raised her eyebrows in disbelief. "It wants to kill me. If I don't fight back, am I supposed to sit here and wait for death?" As she spoke, she looked at Elder Hua Feng for help. "Elder, I know that senior sister Shi Rui doesn't like me. But no matter what, she can't ignore my life, right?" However, Elder Hua Feng's expression was also extremely ugly. "Didn't I just say that you can't hurt their lives?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1343. He spoke word by word, and his voice was extremely cold. Jiang Ji-won was at a loss. What was going on? Even Elder Hua Feng was standing on Shi Rui's side now. That's true. After all, she was the second young lady of the Meteor sect, the successor with a promising future. Compared to her, she was much better. Even if he was an elder of the academy, he was still a human. He would still flatter the strong and trample on the weak, right? Jiang Ji-won sneered in her heart and couldn't help but say, "Elder Hua Feng, do you mean that this nine-tailed blue crow is about to take my life, and I can't resist? I can only let it kill me." "Stupid." The white-browed elder couldn't help but reprimand her. "Do you know that these nine-tailed blue crows live in a group? Once you kill one of them, the rest of the group will chase you to the end. They won't stop until they die." Jiang Ji-won's expression suddenly froze. "Why did we run away just now and not fight back? Do you think that you're the only one who has the ability to kill him? Now that you've killed this one, what should we do with the rest?" He had poked a huge hole in the ground. "As long as we can endure this 15 minutes, we can avoid this trouble. Now, how are we going to deal with the situation? Are you going to rely on that lousy hidden weapon of yours?" The white-browed elder was very angry, so his words were very rude. A trace of nervousness and fear finally appeared on Jiang Ji-won's face. But I have no choice. It wanted to kill me just now. I've already summoned the legendary three-eyed eagle. With its pressure, although it can't make these nine-tailed blue crows retreat, it will at least make them fear it." Shi Rui's expression was cold as he stared at Jiang Ji-won. His gaze was like a knife. "If I remember correctly, when the legendary three-eyed eagle came out, the nine-tailed blue crow in front of you had clearly stopped attacking. Instead, you took advantage of this opportunity to kill it. Shi Rui, are you brainless, or do you want to put all of us in danger?" Shi Rui really hated Jiang Ji-won to the extreme. This woman was unbelievably stupid. Clearly, everything had been explained clearly, and everyone else was fine. They just needed to wait for a while and they would be able to endure it. However, this Jiang Ji-won just had to appear and mess things up. Jiang Ji-won was speechless after being scolded. Her face was burning. Shi Rui's words were like slaps to her face in public, not leaving her any face. However, she had no reason to refute him. Helpless, she could only look at Elder Hua Feng and shed tears in panic. Elder, I didn't do it on purpose. I was too nervous and scared just now, that's why." I didn't know that senior sister was saving me just now. At that time, she already couldn't care about anything else, so why would she think so much? Besides, Shirue had always disliked her. It was still unknown whether her intention to save her was real or fake. If she had taken action earlier and summoned the legendary three-eyed eagle from the beginning, they wouldn't have fallen into such a situation. She wouldn't have been forced to attack the nine-tailed blue crow. Shirue was very smart and immediately guessed the meaning of Jiang Ji-won's words. She laughed sarcastically. What? From what you're saying, do you think I acted too late? Jiang Ji-won immediately said, senior sister misunderstood. I definitely didn't mean that. Really? Whether it's true or not, you know in your heart. Shirue's lips curled up slightly, and her eyes were full of disdain. I don't like you, but I won't cause so much trouble for myself just to deal with you. She said this sentence lightly, but it was so high and mighty. Jiang Ji-won's heart seemed to be blocked by something, and her entire body felt uncomfortable. Tears kept falling, washing out 2 streaks of tears on her blood-stained face. Such a miserable appearance made it seem like she had suffered a great grievance. Hearing that Jiang Ji-won still had no intention of admitting her mistake, Elder Hua Feng was extremely disappointed. It was clearly Jiang Ji-won who caused trouble for all of them, but now she was still acting like a victim. Who was this for? Rue has already saved you, but not only do you not appreciate it, you even suspect her. Jiang Ji-won, you are too disappointing. Jiang Ji-won hurriedly explained, no. Elder. I didn't. A hoarse and ear-piercing screech suddenly sounded. Everyone looked over and saw the 9-tailed blue crows flying quickly towards Jiang Ji-won. Jiang Ji-won was extremely afraid and quickly retreated. The 9-tailed blue crows landed not far in front of her. With the dead one as the center, they formed a circle and flew around. A low, mournful hiss could be heard. Chu Lue frowned slightly. Elder, we have to leave immediately. These 9-tailed blue crows were summoning their own kind. If they were a little later, I'm afraid, let's go. Elder Hua Feng made a prompt decision. Now, even if Shirue summoned the three-eyed eagle, it would be useless. The three-eyed eagle could deter them for a moment, but now that a 9-tailed blue crow had died, they would definitely not let this matter rest. Seeing that everyone was about to leave, Jiang Ji-won's heart skipped a beat, and she hurriedly stood up. Elder. She had to go with them. She absolutely could not be left behind. How could she deal with these 9-tailed blue crows alone? The white-browed elder reprimanded coldly, the 9-tailed blue crows are very vengeful. I'm afraid this matter is not over yet. That one was killed by Jiang Ji-won. There's still blood on her body, so there's no way she can escape. If we continue to take her with us, I'm afraid even we won't be able to escape. He looked at Shirue. Second miss, there's no need for us to pay for this, right? The meaning behind his words could not be more obvious. They had to abandon Jiang Ji-won. Shirue pondered for a moment and looked at Elder Hua Feng. Elder, what do you think? Elder Hua Feng was very conflicted. On one hand, this matter was indeed caused by Jiang Ji-won herself, so she should bear the responsibility herself. But on the other hand, she was a student of the academy. If he abandoned her here, he still felt a little apologetic. Rue, you are all students of the academy. We can't abandon any of you at will, so... How about this? You guys go first, and we'll stay behind. After we're done with the matters here, we'll meet up again when we have the chance. How about that? A trace of helplessness flashed across Shirue's eyes. Elder Hua Feng's suggestion seemed to be fine, but wasn't this putting them in the most dangerous situation? And this was all because of Jiang Ji-won. Elder, it's impossible for us to leave alone. Since you've decided to take her with you, then let's just take her with us. If we have more people, we might be able to deal with it. As soon as he finished speaking, a hoarse cry suddenly came from afar. At the point where the heavens and the earth met, a large expanse of grayish-green surged towards them. Digression, mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1344. At a rough glance, there were at least 100 of them. Why are there so many nine-tailed black crows here? Elder Bai Mei shouted in shock. Then, he immediately looked at Shi Rui. Second miss, if there were only a few of them, they would still be able to deal with them. But, now, there were so many of them. One had to know that these were all divine beasts. They probably couldn't even deal with half of them. When Jiang Jiwan saw this scene, she was so frightened that she even forgot to cry. She hurriedly shouted at Elder Hua Feng in panic. Elder, save me. It wasn't easy for her to survive. How could she die here? She almost rolled and crawled over, wishing that she could kneel on the ground and beg. Shi Rui looked at her with disgust. Shut up. She only knew how to cause trouble all day long and wanted the world to be in chaos. At the critical moment, she became the most cowardly one. This trouble was caused by Jiang Jiwan. Did they really have to pay with their lives? Was she worthy? Jiang Jiwan's body trembled when she heard this shout, but she didn't dare to say anything else. She only looked at Elder Hua Feng and the others in despair and desire. She could only rely on them now. Elder Hua Feng clenched his fists tightly. Now, even if they left Jiang Jiwan here, they might not be able to get rid of those nine-tailed black crows, Elder. Just when everyone was in a state of anxiety and panic, a clear and bright voice sounded. His voice was very clean, like a clear spring flowing down from the mountains, instantly breaking the stifling atmosphere. Chu Yu. Elder Hua Feng looked at Chu Luiyue strangely. Chu Luiyue raised her chin. If you trust me, then come with me. Her tone was very calm, but it made Elder Hua Feng's heart suddenly calm. He didn't know why, but although it was only a short sentence, his anxious and uneasy emotion seemed to have been soothed in an instant. Looking at those dark and clear eyes, many thoughts flashed through his mind. In the end, he only nodded firmly. All right. Chu Liuyue's lips curved into a faint smile. Although Elder Hua Feng was somewhat indecisive, he trusted her very much. Just this point alone was enough. Chu Liuyue stepped forward. Elder Hua Feng followed closely behind. Everyone, keep up. Hearing this order, the other elders in the academy looked at each other, but thinking of what had happened on the way here, they quickly followed. Without mentioning anything else, Chiyu was indeed a lucky star. If she followed him, she might really be able to avoid this disaster. Shi Rui frowned and was about to follow them when the white-browed old man stopped her. His aged face was filled with disapproval. Second miss, this is a serious matter. You have to think twice. In the beginning, Second Miss said that she wanted to work with the people from Lingxiao College, and he agreed. After that, Second Miss agreed to follow Chu Yu's direction, and he also agreed. But now, the people from Lingxiao College had created such a big mess, and they had to clean it up. Their relationship was good, but it wasn't to this extent. The sect leader had sent them here to find the heavenly square cauldron. What was this now? If there was one, there would be two, but not three. They had to separate from Lingxiao College to survive. Sixth uncle, I know what you're worried about. But I have to go with them. Shi Rui said softly but firmly. The white-browed old man hesitated. But, even if we split up now, it's too late. When the nine-tailed black crow died just now, we were all present. Their auras are mixed up, and the remaining ones won't let us go easily. As Shirue spoke, she revealed a faint smile. Moreover, I believe in the Academy Elders, and I also believe in Chuyu. Seeing her determined attitude, the white-browed old man could only nod helplessly. Then, we'll listen to you. If we're really forced into a desperate situation, then we can only. Shirue turned around and followed. Everyone from the meteor sect hurriedly followed. At this moment, Jiang Jiwon suddenly rushed to Elder Huafeng's side and said anxiously, "Elder, do you really plan to trust Chu Yu's so-called intuition so much?" Elder Huafeng stopped in his tracks. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows slightly and glanced at her with a faint smile. Just now, we followed the direction she chose and encountered these nine-tailed black crows. It's a matter of life and death. If we continue to follow her, senior sister Jiang, Chu Luiyue said lazily. If you didn't kill that nine-tailed black crow, we would have already escaped from danger. Why would we still be chased by so many nine-tailed black crows? Jiang Jiwon choked. Besides, if you think it's dangerous to follow us, then we won't force you. Why don't you just go wherever you think is the safest? Chu Liuyue's simple words made Jiang Jiwon speechless. She gritted her teeth and lowered her head in the end. Right now, she really didn't have any qualifications to continue bargaining with these people. Forget it. As long as she kept her life, she could talk about the rest later. Chu Luiyue retracted her gaze and sneered in her heart. Jiang Jiwon seemed to have not understood the situation until now. Everyone present now harbored resentment towards her. Even Elder Huafeng probably no longer had the pity and sympathy he had for her at the beginning. If it wasn't for the fact that he wanted to find the whereabouts of Elder Bo Yen and the others through Jiang Jiwon, he wouldn't have allowed Jiang Jiwon to jump around. The sound of wings flapping came from the sky. It was the nine-tailed black crows rapidly approaching. Chu Luiyue didn't even turn her head. It was as if she didn't put those nine-tailed black crows in her eyes as she walked forward step by step. Taizu, where should we go next? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1345. Chu Luiyue walked forward in the direction indicated by Taizu. Her speed was not considered fast. In fact, at this time, everyone had basically consumed a lot of strength, so they could not be much faster. The nine-tailed green crow would catch up to them sooner or later. Hearing the sound of wings flapping closer and closer, Elder Huafeng could not help but glance sideways at Chu Luiyue, only to see that her expression was calm beyond his expectations. Such a calm temperament did not seem like a 16 or 17-year-old youth at all. It was not that he was not curious, but because he knew about the existence of the crimson gold heavenly phoenix, he subconsciously chose to believe in Chu Luiyue. Everyone walked forward in silence. Swoosh! A terrifying aura suddenly attacked from behind. Jiang Jiwon was shocked and immediately dodged to the side. A green flame streaked past her body at a high speed. Her sleeves instantly burst into flames. Ah! Jiang Jiwon cried out in pain and quickly extinguished the flame. The flames were quickly extinguished, but more than half of her sleeves were burnt. Moreover, there was a large, charred, and twisted scar on her arm from the flames. Intense pain quickly spread through his body. Jiang Jiwon's lips turned pale. In a world of ice and snow, the cold wind was bone-chilling. Cold sweat broke out on her forehead. She turned around in a panic and saw that the nine-tailed green crow flying at the front had attacked her. Their target was indeed her. This time, Jiang Jiwon did not care about the pain and began to run forward at full speed. As she ran, she frantically thought of a way to survive. A few people in front turned around and saw this scene, but they did not make a move. At this time, they still had to save some strength to escape. How could they have the strength to help others? Not to mention that this other person was the culprit who had brought them this big trouble. Jiang Ziyuan was being tortured to the point that she couldn't even speak as she ran away pathetically. However, Chu Luiyue, who was in front, didn't even look at her. The further they went, the clearer Taizu's memories seemed to be. From Chu Luiyue's point of view, this was clearly an endless snowfield. However, Taizu seemed to know every blade of grass and tree here. At this time, Chu Luiyue was extremely sure that Taizu had indeed been here. Taizu, could your other remaining souls be here? Chu Luiyue could not help but ask. Taizu was silent for a moment and sighed softly. Perhaps, in fact, he did feel that something was summoning him. This feeling was very familiar, and as time passed, it became stronger. At this moment, the nine-tailed green crows had all caught up. Some of them directly in front of Chu Luiyue and the others. Chi! Several green flames flew green crows, a barrier. The temperature of the flame was not only it was Lin's, it was Luiyue's. It burned crazily on the snow, but the snow did not show any signs of melting. Chu Luiyue's eyes turned cold. Chu Yu, step back, before Elder Hua Feng could finish his sentence, he saw Chu Luiyue step over. The green flames seemed to have encountered something terrifying and quickly retreated. Everything happened in an instant. If it weren't for Elder Hua Feng standing beside Chu Luiyue and staring at her closely, he probably wouldn't have seen this scene. He was stunned for a moment before he immediately understood something. He raised his hand and waved out a wave of force. The flames began to extinguish. Everyone followed one after another. Shi Rui saw all of this and was about to follow up to ask when she saw Chu Luiyue suddenly stop in her tracks. Elder Hua Feng also stopped. How, just as she opened her mouth, her voice stopped abruptly. Because she also saw the scene in front of her. Right in front of them was actually a canyon. It was as if the ground was suddenly split open by a huge axe. The narrow and endless canyon continued to spread. They could not see where the canyon began or where it ended. They only knew that at this moment, there was a natural moat across this land that stopped them. On both sides were black rocks, as if they had been exposed to wind and rain for thousands of years. It was thick, simple, and vast. On the ground below, red sand was piled up. When the wind blew, the thin layer of sand on the surface would rise with the wind. The rough sand was hot and dry. No one knew where this path led to. Why? Why is there such a canyon here? Shi Rui muttered in shock. Looking around, it was a world of ice and snow. It was as if no matter which direction they walked, they would never reach the end. However, in such a world, there was actually such a special scenery. All the wind and snow seemed to have automatically avoided this place. The air below was dry and warm. It was like another world. At this moment, everyone behind also walked over. After seeing everything in front of them, everyone fell silent. How should they choose? At this moment, the group of nine-tailed blue crows had already forced their way behind them. However, they seemed to be afraid of something. They only lingered in place, unwilling to take another step forward. They don't seem to dare to approach this canyon. A low voice came from the crowd. But we're in a desperate situation now. Even these nine-tailed blue crows are so energetic. Who knows what's hidden in the canyon below? But we don't have any other choice now. With so many nine-tailed blue crows, we're no match for them at all. Obviously, many people were filled with anxiety about this canyon that had suddenly appeared. At this moment, Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and jumped. Chu Yu! Elder Hua Feng exclaimed in shock. After hesitating for a moment, he immediately flew down. They had already followed them to this point, so they could only continue forward. Even if there was any danger down there, was it safe now? Seeing that Elder Hua Feng and Chu Luiyue had both gone down, Shi Rui frowned slightly and immediately flew down as well. This way, everyone chose to follow. From afar, one figure after another quickly disappeared from the snowy plains. The nine-tailed blue crows let out angry cries, but they still didn't dare to take a step closer. After circling in the air for a long time, they finally left. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1346. Chu Luiyue headed towards the bottom of the canyon. The closer she got, the more she could feel the hot aura. Unlike the bone-chilling snowfield above, the temperature here was much higher. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was as warm as spring. When Chu Luiyue's feet finally stepped on the red sand, she even vaguely felt that it was a little hot. She lowered her eyes and took a look. The sand that was blown on her face by the wind was hot. Fortunately, the grains of the sand were larger and rougher. Walking on it was not like walking in the desert, where she had to sink with every step. Just this point alone was already much better than trudging through the thick snow outside. She glanced at both sides. The red sand was covered in endless sand. Elder Huafeng landed beside Chu Luiyue and followed her line of sight. He couldn't hide the shock in his eyes. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have believed that there was such a canyon below. Furthermore, this canyon appeared to be very strange. He wanted to ask Chu Luiyue where this was, but halfway through, he remembered that she probably did not know either. However, no matter what, this place seemed to be much safer than outside. At the very least, they had avoided the nine-tailed black crow. Chu Yu, you're really good. How did you find such a place? Shi Rui walked towards Chu Luiyue with a surprised smile on her face. Chu Luiyue smiled. Senior sister, you flatter me. It was just a coincidence. I didn't know that this place would look like this. Shi Rui's brows twitched slightly, but she did not fully believe his words. If she really didn't know, why would she come here without any resistance? Looking at Chu Yu's expression just now, he did seem to be full of surprise. It didn't seem like he was faking it. She suppressed this thought. No matter what, Chu Yu had helped them solve a problem. I owe you a favor. Shi Rui smiled. If it wasn't for you, we don't know what would have happened today. Chu Luiyue thought about it and did not refuse. Shi Rui was interested in befriending her, and it just so happened that she also admired Shi Rui. It was not bad to have more friends. Moreover, the other party was such an important figure. At this moment, a low cry of pain was heard. It turned out that Jiang Jiwon had fallen down from the stone wall. Her head and face were covered in blood, and she looked battered and exhausted. Originally, she had also flown down like everyone else, but in the end, her physical strength was not enough. Coupled with the many injuries on her body, she did not control herself well and ended up like this. An elder of the academy shook his head and sighed. He walked over and handed her a jade bottle. He was the one who had helped Jiang Jiwon bandage her wound. Without a doubt, there were pills inside. But this time, the elder left after giving her the medicine. He didn't seem to have any intention of helping her deal with the new wounds. Although everyone was out of danger now, they still couldn't let go of Jiang Jiwon's wrongdoings immediately. How could she let go of a matter of life and death so easily? Jiang Jiwon knew that she was in the wrong, so she didn't dare to say anything. She just silently hid at the side. Left, right, 2 roads. Which way should we go? Elder Huafeng asked. After experiencing these things, he had begun to unconsciously seek Chu Liyue's opinion. Chu Liyue crossed her arms and fell into deep thought. After a moment, she pointed to the right. Over there. Digression, a crippled February floated past. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1347. This place used to be a river. Taizu's voice sounded in a low voice. Chu Liyue's eyes flickered as she walked forward with a calm expression. It seemed that when Taizu came here 1,000 years ago, this place was still different. It was just that the sea had turned into mulberry fields, and everything had changed. This sand contains abundant energy, but it's too mottled and not easy to absorb. Taizu said regretfully. Otherwise, you can continue cultivating here. Chu Liyue smiled in her heart. Taizu, I'm not in a hurry, so why are you in a hurry? It's not that I'm in a hurry, but this is the only way to live up to your current talent. Taizu sighed softly. You've already broken through to the Xian King Master Realm, and if I'm not wrong, you should be able to break through the shackles and reach the realm of a doctor soon. Only this martial artist. Logically speaking, you've already devoured so much heaven and earth origin energy. Even if you don't break through to the God realm, you should at least be a rank 9 martial artist. But no. Without a doubt, Chu Liyue had astonishing talent in all 3 aspects of cultivation. Any one of them could definitely be considered top-notch. Chu Liyue's cultivation as a Xian master and celestial physician had always been very smooth, but as a martial artist, the speed of her breakthrough was so slow that it made one's hair stand on end. At this point, she was only a rank 8 martial artist. Others might not know, but he knew it the best. Chu Liyue had already recovered her Tianjing Yuan Meridian, and when she broke through to the rank 7 martial artist and passed the God Ascension Tribulation, the scene was also extraordinary, something he had never seen before in his life. With such talent, it was really strange that she could barely break through to the rank 8 martial artist. A faint smile flashed across Chu Liyue's lips. She was already used to this. After her rebirth, from the moment she obtained this water droplet, she realized that her cultivation as a martial artist seemed to have been deliberately suppressed by this thing. Although I'm a rank 8 martial artist, but I might be able to fight against a rank 9 martial artist. Chu Liyue teased in his heart. However, this time, the Taizu had a different opinion. In the end, it's different. I know that your strength is tyrannical, but the difference between levels doesn't seem that obvious to you. But that was only for now. The gap between a rank 8 and a rank 9 martial artist may be bridged with your various means now, but if you go further up, the gap between the ranks will become bigger and bigger. When that time comes, it won't be so easy for you to challenge someone of a higher rank like you are doing now. For example, if you are a rank 9 warrior and the other party is a demigod, what would you do? If it was a high god, he could easily crush you with his divine domain. These questions. Have you thought about them? Currently, Chu Liyue could rely on that streak of divine power to barely exchange a blow with a demigod expert. Coupled with the Scarlet Heaven Sword, it was possible that they could fight to a draw. However, those were ultimately external forces. Only when one's own strength was strong could one be considered a true expert. Chu Liyue lowered his eyebrows and narrowed his eyes, pondering for a moment. Taizu's lesson is right. In fact, she had always been curious about this matter. Because from the situation of the Azure Sky Roll, she had broken through to the divine domain before, but she had always been missing this memory, so there was no way to investigate. I wonder, when she broke through to the divine domain now, what kind of scene would it be? Time seemed to pass exceptionally slowly. Everyone walked forward in silence, but they didn't know when the end would be. This feeling of not seeing hope was the most torturous. And the further they walked, the hotter the surroundings seemed to be. Don't you feel that something is wrong here? Finally, an elder of the academy couldn't help but speak, wiping the sweat on his forehead. I feel it too. The temperature here is indeed abnormal. The other elder nodded. With their strength, even if they walked for a while under the scorching summer sun, they wouldn't be as hot as they were now. This feeling seemed to be. It seemed to be starting from inside their bodies. Look, the surrounding scenery seems to have changed as well. Chu Luiyue recovered her senses, instinctively looked up, and scanned her surroundings. With this look, she indeed saw something wrong. On the rocks on both sides of the canyon, there were ravines and cracks. It seemed to have some kind of pattern, or it seemed to have been distorted by some special force. In short, it looked a little strange. Chu Luiyue couldn't explain where this feeling came from, but her heart felt inexplicably suppressed by something. Suddenly, her gaze focused, and she took a few steps forward, walking to the right. Chu Yu, what's wrong? Elder Hua Feng walked over with a puzzled expression. Chu Luiyue stood a step away from the mountain rock. Looking up from here, it was a steep cliff that was almost 90 degrees. One could even see a pile of pure white snow on top of it. What are you looking at? Elder Hua Feng followed her gaze, but he didn't find anything wrong. Chu Luiyue took a step forward and swept away a piece of red sand under her feet. Half of a white bone suddenly appeared. Elder Hua Feng was stunned. It seemed to be a bone that had been buried here for a long time. Because only a little was exposed, it was impossible to guess its shape, let alone its identity. But the key was that this white bone was lustrous and faintly emitting light. Upon closer inspection, one could see the light slowly flowing inside. This was definitely not an ordinary bone. Chu Luiyue raised her hand and grabbed the bone, wanting to take it out. However, the lower part of it was buried in the hard mountain rocks. Chu Luiyue tried several times, but she didn't succeed. In the end, Chu Luiyue could only give up. This should have all been buried here. Chu Luiyue said softly, then leaned over and grabbed a handful of sand. This sand should have evolved from these mountain rocks. That was why half of the white bone was exposed. It was just that she didn't know what kind of skeleton this was. It was actually buried in this thick and hard mountain rock. This isn't a human bone. The legendary three-eyed eagle suddenly said. Chu Luiyue was stunned. Not a human bone. Then this is the bone of a dragon. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1348. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. A dragon's bone. That's right. And from the looks of it, the owner of this skeleton had quite a high status in the dragon race when he was alive. It's very likely that it's the skeleton of an azure dragon or a black dragon. Perhaps it was because it had fused with the two skeletons of the dragon race, but the current three-eyed eagle was extremely sensitive to this. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been able to identify the other party with just half a bone. Chu Luiyue frowned in confusion. There shouldn't be only one bone buried here. It was very likely that a dragon had fallen here. Chu Yu. Chu Yu. Elder Hua Feng called out to her twice before Chu Luiyue came back to her senses. Did you think of something? Elder Hua Feng carefully sized up her expression. Chu Luiyue shook her head regretfully, and the corners of her lips curled up slightly. No, I just feel that it's a little strange for such a bone to appear here. Maybe there were cultivators who died here in the past. An elder behind her guessed. Looking at this skeleton, it's at least a demigod expert. However, this wasn't that strange. This was the northern region of the Great Desolate Land, and countless experts had died here. What was a piece of bone? Chu Luiyue nodded. Maybe. The group of people continued to move forward. The matter of that bone didn't attract anyone's attention. However, after walking for a while, Chu Luiyue found a few more similar bones. Most of them were buried underground, and with the cover of the red sand, it was almost impossible to notice them if one didn't look carefully. Could these bones be related to the Heavenly Square's sacred cauldron? An elder couldn't help but ask in a low voice. Everyone fell silent for a moment and looked at each other. In fact, they all had the same suspicion in their hearts, but they didn't mention it before. It was fine if they occasionally saw one or two bones, but along the way, they seemed to appear every once in a while. Moreover, these bones were the same as the first one. They were lustrous and looked like white jade at first glance. Bang! At this moment, a shocking sound suddenly came from in front of everyone. Chu Luiyue's heart tightened as he quickly looked up. He saw a mountain rock in front of him suddenly crumble and fall rapidly. He crashed heavily onto the ground. In an instant, the ground shook and sand and pebbles were sent flying. The originally spacious canyon became crowded due to the appearance of this huge rock, almost blocking their path. Then, several figures came out from behind the rock. Chu Luiyue took a closer look. There were about 10 of them, and one of the men was being besieged. 2 fists were no match for 4 hands. The man was defeated bit by bit. However, the people besieging him were all trying to kill him. It didn't take long for the man to fall to the ground. Die! The man who was about to be beheaded struggled to get up, wanting to escape. However, one of his legs was already broken, and he was on the verge of death. How could he run? Seeing that a long sword was about to pierce through his head, he suddenly looked up and saw Chu Luiyue and the rest. He used almost all of his strength to pull himself up. Help! I beg you, please save me. He struggled to crawl over. His face was covered in blood and he looked panicked. I am the 3rd young master of the Liang family, Liang Shaokong. As long as you save me, my Liang family will definitely repay you in the future. Chu Luiyue narrowed his eyes. Liang family. That sounds familiar. Shi Rui immediately recognized his identity. That's Liang Xiaoxiao's brother. Chu Luiyue instantly understood. Liang Shaokong, Liang Xiaoxiao, no wonder she felt that she had heard of them before. Wasn't there only one Liang family in the entire Divine Ruins world? The group of people who originally wanted to kill Liang Shaokong to silence him immediately had ugly expressions on their faces when they heard him say his identity. The person in front looked directly at Elder Hua Feng and the others. Originally, he wanted to curse them, but when he saw Elder Hua Feng and the others, he immediately realized that these people were very strong. They didn't seem to be easy to provoke. He forcefully swallowed the remaining half of his words, and his eyes swept over the crowd in shock and bewilderment. The people behind him had already taken advantage of this short period of time to detain Liang Shaokong. Whether he lived or died, it was just a matter of a sentence. May I ask? Where are you from? Elder Hua Feng took a step forward. I am Hua Feng of Lingshao College. As soon as he finished speaking, the expressions of the people on the other side changed. The man standing in front immediately cupped his fists politely. So it's Elder Hua Feng. Sorry for the disrespect. We are from the Su family of Lingyun Mountain. The Su family of Lingyun Mountain had never been on good terms with the Liang family, so it was normal for them to fight. However, Liang Shaokong was a direct descendant of the Liang family, so it was strange that they were so ruthless. Elder Hua Feng, you must save me. Even if it's for my sister's sake. His sister was naturally Liang Xiaoxiao. I have been chased by these people for a day and a night. They are determined to kill me, Elder. Please help me. The Liang family will definitely be grateful. At this moment, Liang Shaokong was like a drowning person desperately trying to grab onto the last straw. Elder Hua Feng, this matter is a personal grudge between us and Liang Shaokong. Please don't interfere. The leader of the men from Lingyun Mountain said in a deep voice. They didn't have much contact with Lingshao College, so their relationship was naturally not as good as Liang Shaokong's. If Lingshao College was determined to help Liang Shaokong, then they might not be able to do anything to Liang Shaokong today. Elder Hua Feng couldn't help but ask, what's going on? You have to ask Liang Shaokong about this. If he didn't scheme to frame us first, why would we chase after him like this? He lied to us and lured us here. Then, he waited for an opportunity to murder us. He has already killed more than 20 people from Lingyun Mountain. How can we not take revenge for such a blood feud? Hearing this, everyone present was shocked. If this was true, then it was understandable that they insisted on killing Liang Shaokong. It's not like that. Elder Hua Feng, don't listen to his one-sided words. In fact, I was also deceived. Liang Shaokong swallowed a mouthful of saliva with difficulty. Previously, we found traces of the appearance of the heavenly square cauldron. When we were about to go and investigate, we met the people from Lingyun Mountain. They originally wanted to find trouble with us, but the geese didn't want to waste time on this matter, so we simply told them the news. Moreover, we discussed that whether we could obtain the heavenly square cauldron would depend on our own abilities. After everything is over, we will resolve the grudge between us. At this point, Liang Shaokong's body trembled, as if he had thought of something terrible. We searched all the way, but who knew that it had nothing to do with the heavenly square cauldron, and, roar. A deep and ancient dragon roar came from afar. Digression, I went out early in the morning and planned to write on the train. In the end, my computer ran out of battery and I couldn't charge it. I couldn't upload the 1,000 words I wrote, so I could only try to write on my phone. I can't confirm the time and amount of updates for today's update. I'll try my best to write on my phone on the train. But because I haven't tried it before, it's very likely that I won't be able to write much. I'll make up for what I owe in the next few days. Thank you for your understanding. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1349. The dragon's roar spread throughout the canyon. It was as if it had been covered in 1,000 years of wind and frost. It was filled with the aura of iron and blood, causing one's heart to tremble. Chu Luiyue only felt a buzzing in her ears. A heavy pressure crushed down and instantly reached the depths of her heart. It was almost suffocating. She quickly raised her eyes and looked forward. In the long and narrow canyon, there were cliffs on both sides. In the middle, there was only red sand rising with the wind. It was a vast expanse. Could it be that a dragon is here? Everyone was shocked. However, the expressions of Liang Shaokong and the people from Spirit Charm Mountain were a little strange. It was as if they were shocked, but there was also a hint of fear in their eyes. That's not a real dragon, Liang Shaokong opened his mouth. His voice was hoarse and his throat was tight. Not a dragon. But this dragon's roar and the pressure contained within it can't be faked. How? Elder Hua Feng, that's the place Liang Shaokong tricked us into going. The man in the lead of Spirit Charm Mountain sneered. It's extremely dangerous there. We advise you not to take this risk. Seeing that he didn't seem to be faking it, Elder Hua Feng and the others exchanged glances. This commotion was definitely not ordinary. Perhaps there really was some secret hidden there. But from the reaction of Liang Shaokong and the others, it was indeed very dangerous. What do you think? Shu pondered for a moment, but there was a trace of hesitation in her heart. Of course she wanted to go. After all, they didn't come here from afar for fun. But Spirit Charm Mountain and the Liang family had suffered heavy casualties. Chu, what do you think? The rest of the people also looked at Chu Luiyue. After these things, they seemed to have unconsciously treated Chu Luiyue as their backbone. When they encountered something that they couldn't decide, they would ask for her opinion. Chu Luiyue nodded. Go. Elder Hua Feng, you can't go. Liang Shaokong couldn't care less at this moment. He shouted anxiously as he struggled to stand up. Kneel. The men next to him shouted angrily and pressed Liang Shaokong down with their swords. Feeling the cold touch on his neck and the blood slowly oozing out, Liang Shaokong was so scared that his face turned pale and he quickly knelt down. Even though it was humiliating, his life was more important in this situation. That side is indeed very dangerous. Elder Hua Feng, why must you do this? Previously, I didn't know. That's why so many people from my Liang clan were implicated. However, since I've already suffered a loss, how can I just watch as you guys go over? Liang Shaokong really didn't want them to go over. It wasn't easy for him to escape from there. How could he follow this group of people back? The leader of the Lingyun Mountain frowned as well, his face filled with disapproval. However, this had nothing to do with them as long as the other party promised not to interfere with Liang Shaokong's affairs. If that's the case, then we'll take our leave first. As he spoke, he waved his hand and was about to leave with Liang Shaokong. Elder Hua Feng nodded. Liang Shaokong's eyes suddenly widened. Elder Hua Feng and the others weren't planning to stand up for him. What he didn't know was that Elder Hua Feng was already in a lot of trouble. They hadn't even found the elders and students of their own academy. They had just escaped from the nine-tailed black crow siege. How could they have the extra energy to care about others? Liang Shaokong was Liang Xiaoxiao's brother, but none of them were Liang Xiaoxiao's master. As for the Liang clan, could it be that the Lingyun Mountain was easy to deal with? Not to mention that there was indeed a grudge between them that had dozens of lives. At this time, the best choice was to not interfere and ignore them. I know the safest way to go over. Elder Hua Feng, if you can help me once, I can go back with you. Every moment counts. He was sure that after these people left, the people of the Lingyun Mountain would immediately kill him. Elder Hua Feng hesitated for a moment. If Liang Shaokong could bring him along, it might be much more convenient. However, he really didn't want to get involved in this mess between them. No need. Chu Luiyue laughed. Elder, if you're worried, I'll lead the way. Seeing that she seemed very confident, Elder Hua Feng couldn't help but feel much more at ease. All right. In any case, Chu had always been in charge of this journey. Although the journey was dangerous, he was still safe and sound. Therefore, he trusted him very much now. There's no time to lose. Let's go. As Chu Luiyue spoke, she walked forward. Everyone quickly followed. Liang Shaokong was dumbfounded. What was going on? There were so many people, but they actually listened to a brat. That Chu, could it be that he was some powerful figure? But he had never heard of him before, wasn't this courting death? Even the people of the Lingyun Mountain were shocked when they saw this scene. Could it be that this youth was the one who had the final say in this group of people? But other than looking delicate and clean, there was nothing particularly outstanding about her. Roar! Another dragon's roar sounded. This time, the sound was clearer and louder than before. The pressure was naturally stronger. A trace of hesitation flashed in the eyes of the leader of the Lingyun Mountain. In fact, when they went over just now, other than being attacked and killing more than half of them, they didn't see what was going on at all. After thinking for a moment, he walked in front of Liang Shaokong. Swoosh! A long sword was pointed at Liang Shaokong's forehead. As long as it moved an inch forward, it would be completely finished off. Liang Shaokong widened his eyes in horror, and a trace of despair surged in his heart. Suddenly, he saw a familiar figure from the corner of his eye. Ziyuan. Jiang Jiwan's body stiffened, and then she continued to walk forward as if she didn't hear anything. Seeing her reaction, Liang Shaokong, who was still a little suspicious, immediately confirmed her identity. Ziyuan, it's really you. He looked at the woman who walked past him in disbelief. Her clothes were messy, and her body was covered in blood. Her left sleeve seemed to have been burned by something, and there was a large twisted burn on her arm. Her aura was weak, and her face was haggard. She was completely different from the smiling woman in his memory. However, Liang Shaokong didn't have time to ask anything else. Ziyuan. Please help me. Because of Liang Xiaoxiao, they were familiar with each other. Moreover, Liang Shaokong had always been interested in her and tried to please her. It was a pity that Jiang Jiwan had always kept him at arm's length. She should be the one that Liang Shaokong was most familiar with among these people. Hearing Liang Shaokong call out her name, Jiang Jiwan was annoyed, but she had to pull herself together and said hesitantly, "Third young master Liang, it's not that Ziyuan doesn't want to help you, but, as you can see, I can't say anything. Everyone listens to Chu Yu." Liang Shaokong blurted out, "Then help me beg him." Digression: human potential is really endless. I've been writing for 5 years, but I haven't been able to use my phone to write. Until today, I'll have a meal and check my phone in the afternoon. If there's still battery, I'll continue to write. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from love. Chapter 1350. Jiang Jiwan looked at Liang Shaokong in disbelief. What did he say? He wanted her to help beg Chu Yu. Dream on. It was already hard enough for her to lower herself for his sake, let alone Liang Shaokong, who had nothing to do with her. She didn't get along with Chu Yu, and there was also a barrier between her and Shi Ruier. The only people she could plead for were Elder Hua Feng and the others. But that was also because she was a student of the academy. The attitude of the few elders was very clear just now. They had no intention of helping at all. At this time, if she jumped out to speak up for Liang Shaokong, wouldn't she be looking for trouble? Third young master Liang, I'm really sorry. I'm just an ordinary student of the academy. As for your matters, I really can't do anything. With that, Jiang Jiwan lifted her feet and was about to leave. Liang Shaokong was anxious. Wait. You can't abandon me like this. If anything happens to me, Xiao Xiao will definitely not forgive you in the future. Jiang Jiwan sneered. Liang Xiaoxiao. Even if the person who was about to be killed was Liang Xiaoxiao herself, she wouldn't take a second look, let alone Liang Shaokong. She walked forward without looking back. Liang Shaokong's eyes were about to split open. Jiang Jiwan. To think that Xiao Xiao and I have always been so good to you. I didn't expect that in the end, we raised an ingrate. Just you wait. Liang Shaokong didn't finish his sentence. Bang! His body stiffened and he fell straight to the ground. Bright red blood gushed out from his neck and quickly dyed red. Then, it was quickly swallowed up by the red sand. His eyeballs popped out as he stared at Jiang Jiwan's back. Jiang Ziyuan faintly felt a chill coming from behind her, and a layer of goosebumps appeared on her back. However, she didn't turn back in the end. She only walked forward quickly and caught up with the others. The man leading the Lingyun Mountain team looked meaningfully at the figure in the distance. Then, he retracted his gaze and coldly glanced at the dead Liang Shaokong. Clean it up. Yes. Chu Luiyue and his group continued to move forward after passing the boulder in the middle. The further they went, the deeper the ravines on both sides of the cliff. The lines crisscrossed, and the texture of the skin was distinct. The temperature was also much higher than before. Chu Luiyue's heart unconsciously gave birth to a trace of irritation. The blood in his body surged, as if it was about to rush out directly. Taizu's voice was particularly deep and powerful, like a basin of ice water pouring down on Chu Luiyue's head, immediately calming him down a lot. The origin power here is muddled and complicated. Too much of it will disturb one's mental state. Be careful. Chu Luiyue rubbed his temples, a trace of lingering fear in his heart. Thank you for your reminder, Taizu. With these mixed energies gathered together, even if one didn't purposely devour them, it was inevitable that one would be affected while walking among them. She was really careless. Elder, remind everyone to set up a barrier. There's something wrong with the origin power here. As Chu Luiyue spoke, a brilliant golden color quickly appeared on his body and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Elder Hua Feng responded with a solemn expression and turned around to instruct everyone seriously. He had also noticed that something was wrong just now, but he wasn't sure. A large part of this power seems to be emitted from the red sand. I don't know what's going on. Elder Hua Feng muttered in a low voice. Chu Luiyue's eyes drooped slightly, but the dragon bones buried deep underground flashed in his mind. Perhaps, look. What is that? Shi Rui suddenly exclaimed. Chu Luiyue put away his thoughts and looked up. In front of him, a cliff blocked the path. It seemed to be the end of the canyon. On the mountain rock, there was a door. Tall. Magnificent. Solemn. The door was completely red, like a red-hot soldering iron. Terrifying heat emanated from it, setting off rolling heat waves. The surrounding space seemed to be slightly distorted. It was terrifying. On the ground not far from the door, dozens of corpses were scattered everywhere. Most of them were already damaged and incomplete, and they looked terrifying. Chu Luiyue immediately understood that these should be the people from the Spirit Charm Mountain and the Liang family who had died here previously. It seemed that they were almost wiped out before they could even enter the door. What? What is this? How can there be such a place in the northern region of the primordial world? It looks very strange. Didn't you see that those people are all dead in front of the door? If we want to go in, it should be very dangerous. Don't you feel that although it's hot here, there's always a gloomy feeling? Everyone discussed in low voices. Chu Luiyue was about to walk forward when he was stopped by Elder Hua Feng. Wait! Wasn't this brat a little too reckless? There were corpses everywhere in front of him, but he could still walk forward without changing his expression. Was he really not afraid of death? You stay back. I'll go and check out the situation first. Elder Hua Feng said in an unquestionable tone. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but laugh, but he didn't argue with him. Elder, be careful. Elder Hua Feng nodded and walked forward. Everyone gradually quieted down and looked over. The closer he got, the more Elder Hua Feng could feel the astonishing pressure emitted from the door. The blood in his body seemed to be flowing at a much slower speed. He frowned. In the end, Elder Hua Feng stopped about 20 steps away from the door. He had already sensed the killing intent surging out from inside. His many years of experience told him that if he continued forward, it would be dangerous. However, he stopped for a moment before walking forward. Chi! Before his footsteps landed, a strong wind suddenly attacked him. Elder Hua Feng was shocked in his heart, and then he punched out. He actually chose to face it head-on. Boom! Two powerful forces collided fiercely. A loud sound was heard. Sand and stones flew everywhere. Strong winds howled. The red sand quickly gathered into a vortex in midair, erupting with a powerful suction force. Elder Hua Feng was caught off guard and took a step forward uncontrollably. His heart trembled. He retreated without hesitation. However, it was easy to come, but it wasn't so easy to leave. The sand contained abundant power, especially the sand near the door. When it gathered together, the power was so great that even Elder Hua Feng found it difficult to resist. Elder Shi Rui was about to step forward when she was stopped by the white-browed old man. "Second miss, wait here for a moment. This old man will go." Before he finished speaking, his figure had already disappeared from the spot. In the next moment, everyone saw him appear beside Elder Hua Feng. Swish! He held a long saber in his hand and slashed down fiercely. A crack instantly appeared on the vortex that wrapped around Elder Hua Feng. "Let's go." Elder Hua Feng saw the opportunity and immediately ran back with all his strength. However, just as the two of them were about to escape, the vortex formed by the red sand suddenly expanded. The vortex turned into a storm and surged forward. Digression: I don't know if I can reach the 5th update. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1351. Quickly retreat. Elder Hua Feng shouted loudly as he realized that something was wrong. A trace of shock flashed through Shi Rui's eyes. Then, she turned around without any hesitation. "Let's go." It was better for them to escape at this time. Everyone had an intuition that something was wrong. So, they accelerated their retreat without any hesitation. However, it was too late. Whoosh! They didn't have enough time to escape. Suddenly, the red sand behind them rose with the wind, and formed a huge barrier. It had completely sealed off their escape route. An elder's expression hardened as he leaped forward, raising his sword as he charged forward. Clang! With a crisp sound, the long sword in his hand actually broke into 2 pieces. The rebounding force hit him, and sent his body flying. Then, he fell to the ground. Puff! His complexion turned pale, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Everyone who was about to follow him stood rooted to the ground in shock. This is just a collection of red sand. How can it be so terrifying? They didn't have time to react. Suddenly, a huge suction force surged from behind, and wrapped them up. A young man from the meteor sect couldn't resist it. He fell down, and was surrounded by the red sand. Then, he was quickly dragged to the back. The coarse ground quickly cut through his clothes. He was frightened, and struggled with all his might. He wanted to get out of this situation. However, he only aggravated the injury on his back. Faint bloodstains appeared on the ground wherever he was dragged. However, they were quickly absorbed, and disappeared. Brother Zhao. Shi Rui jumped up, and chased after him. However, everyone was trapped in this space filled with red sand. Their strength was suppressed, and they couldn't use even half of their strength. Moreover, they weren't a match for this terrifying force even if they used all of their strength. Shi Rui didn't have time to touch anyone. She had already lost control of her body. She wasn't the only one. Everyone on the scene was the same. They were like insignificant ants that were being dragged to the door. Chu Lue felt as if her body was being restrained by some kind of force. She couldn't break free, and couldn't move. There was only a vast expanse of red in front of her. She couldn't see anything else. She felt as if her body had been squeezed out of shape. Her internal organs were squeezed together, and she felt as if they would explode at any time. Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain in his hand. She looked down with difficulty and found that the back of her hand had been cut by a coarse piece of sand, and blood was slowly seeping out. Although she was only a rank 8 warrior now, her physical strength was comparable to a rank 9 warrior. This sand could actually cut through her skin and flesh so easily. One could only imagine what kind of shocking power it contained. A strong force hit her, and her chest shook violently. Blood flowed out of the corner of her mouth. At this moment, she suddenly understood how the corpses in front of the gate came to be. I can't be so passive anymore. Chu Luiyue clenched his teeth and circulated the force in his body with great difficulty. However, the energy around her was too strong, and the amount of energy she could use in her body was too little. If that was the case, he might not even be able to unleash a single god-stuffing fist. Roar! Right at this moment, another dragon roar entered his ears. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat as he looked up. This time, she finally heard it clearly. This sound came from the canyon. It came from the ravines on the cliffs, from the red sand that filled the sky, and from the corpses that were either exposed or buried deep underground. Right at this moment, Chu Luiyue's body suddenly erupted with a tyrannical wave of energy. Bang! The big door under the mountain rock opened with a sound. Digression, I'm getting off the train later. There's no need for that today. Tomorrow at noon. Mobile users, please browse and read for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1352. Chu Luiyue's body was instantly sucked in. Bang! The sound of the door slamming shut came from behind. At the same time, Chu Luiyue's body was also thrown to the ground by a strong force. All the bones in her body felt like they were about to fall apart. It was painful. She propped herself up and looked up. This was an incomparably wide cave. On the red and gray rocks, there were several fist-sized pearls inlaid, emitting a faint glow and illuminating the surroundings. And on the empty ground in the middle, there was a tombstone. From a distance, Chu Luiyue could still clearly feel the heavy pressure emanating from the tombstone. She held her breath and looked around her again. There was no one. Other than her, there was no one here. And the door was tightly closed. No one else came in. Chu Luiyue frowned. She stood there and waited quietly for a moment, wanting to listen to the movements outside. But other than her heartbeat, there was no other sound. This thick and heavy door seemed to directly isolate everything from the outside world. Chu Luiyue thought for a moment and finally walked forward. She stood 5 steps away from the tombstone. It was an ordinary-looking tombstone. It was grayish-white, thick, and simple. It was about the same height as Chu Luiyue. But it was blank, without a single word. And other than this tombstone, there was nothing else here. It was flat and flat. Chu Luiyue stared at the tombstone for a long time, but she didn't see anything unusual. Just as she was filled with doubts, the water droplet in her dantian suddenly began to spin slowly. That was where the ripple came from. Soon, the surrounding energy of heaven and earth began to surge towards her and quickly entered her body. Outside the door, the storm stopped. Everything calmed down. The people who were still wrapped in the red sand were now thrown to the ground. A moment later, Elder Hua Feng was the first to come back to his senses. He calmed his breath, got up, and looked around. Although some people were injured, their lives were not in danger. After reading it, he immediately sensed that something was wrong. Where's Chu Yu? Everyone was stunned when they heard this. Chu Yu. Wasn't he just as one of the elders spoke, he was surprised to find that the figure beside him had disappeared. Taking a closer look, everyone was there except for Chu Yu. When the door opened just now, he seemed to have been sucked in. A low, uncertain voice came from the side. Just now, when the red sand filled the sky, everyone was trapped. They couldn't even guarantee their own safety, let alone the safety of others. Therefore, not many people witnessed that scene with their own eyes. What? Elder Hua Feng's heart sank as he turned around. The red door was tightly shut. If he hadn't heard the sound of the door opening and closing just now, he wouldn't have believed this excuse. How could this be? Everyone escaped the calamity, only Chuyu was brought in. What should he do now? Why does it have to be him? Although Chuyu wasn't his disciple yet, in Elder Hua Feng's heart, he had long treated him as his own disciple and doted on him. Now that he was in a predicament and his life and death were unknown, he was naturally extremely worried. Among us, he is the only rank 8 warrior. Could it be? At the side, Jiang Ji-won, who had just stood up, carefully wiped the dust and blood off her face and asked softly. You mean, Chuyu is like this because his strength is too low? Elder Hua Feng asked in a deep voice. Jiang Ji-won could hear the dissatisfaction in his words and immediately shook her head. She explained nervously, Elder, that's not what I meant. I'm just worried. After all, so many of us are still fine, but only junior brother Chuyu. This really can't help but be suspicious. If it wasn't for this reason, what else could it be? Those who were able to come here, which one of them wasn't gifted? Which one of them wasn't outstanding? Only this Chuyu, who was only a rank 8 warrior, actually followed them. Not only did he come, he even ordered everyone around, as if everyone should listen to him. Why? Now, even the heavens couldn't stand it anymore and directly locked him in. Who knew what kind of place was behind that door? It was still unknown whether Chuyu could come out or not. Elder Hua Feng sneered in his heart. He was very clear about Jiang Ji-won's thoughts. Regarding this matter, she didn't laugh out loud on the spot, which was already extremely restrained. In her heart, she probably couldn't wait for something to happen to Chuyu. Even if he is only a rank 8 warrior now, his strength and ability are not something that ordinary people can compare to. If it weren't for him, we would probably still be pursued by those 9-tailed black crows. Jiang Ji-won's face stiffened. When Elder Hua Feng said this, it was undoubtedly a slap to her face in public. Everyone, rest here first. Elder Hua Feng ordered. Then, he walked towards the door alone. Shi Rui immediately followed with a solemn expression. Elder, what do you plan to do now? Find a way to open the door and bring Chuyu out. Elder Hua Feng's answer was simple and straightforward. Shi Rui frowned and glanced at the door. Of course, she also wanted to do this, but the key was, how could that door be so easy to open? Just by approaching it, she already felt the pressure. Without even trying, Shi Rui could guess that they couldn't open this door with their bare hands. But if they left it alone, Chuyu was still inside. Thinking of the terrifying storm from before, Shi Rui still had lingering fear. I wonder what Chuyu's situation is inside. Judging from the commotion just now, it wouldn't be so easy to deal with. No matter what, we have to give it a try. Elder Hua Feng said solemnly. As he spoke, he had already walked to the door. Then, he took a deep breath and raised his hands. Several streams of light flew out and quickly intertwined in mid-air, forming a huge silver Xian formation. Because he had just been injured, forcefully mobilizing his strength caused the blood in his body to surge. He slowly and firmly swallowed the bloody taste between his lips and teeth, his eyes staring fixedly at the door in front of him. Today, he had to break this door. At this moment, a stern shout was heard. Who is it? Shi Rui was stunned for a moment and turned around. In the canyon, a group of people was walking towards them. It was the group of people from Spirit Charm Mountain that they had just met. Sure Rue's heart skipped a beat. They had left and returned, they had clearly said that they were going to leave, so why did they suddenly come back? So it's you guys. The elders recognized the identity of the people who had come and immediately became vigilant. Why are you guys back? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1353. Elder, don't be so nervous. We're just here to take a look. We don't have any other intentions. The man in the lead cupped his hands politely. However, Elder Huafeng and the others didn't really believe this excuse. They had clearly left before, but now they suddenly came back. They didn't come back because they were bored. The people from Lingyun Mountain looked at each other. At first, they really wanted to leave, but after dealing with Liang Shaokong, they couldn't find the end of the path no matter how hard they walked. In addition, they wanted to know the situation here, so they came back in the end. Previously, they had stayed at a relatively far position, so they could clearly see everything that had happened just now. The most shocked one was that Chuyu was brought in. This was because they had encountered similar dangers when they were here previously. However, at that time, almost half of their people were dead or injured, and the door didn't open. Elder Huafeng, if you don't mind, we can help you try to open this door. The man in the lead didn't mind their vigilant attitude and continued. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone looked at each other. Elder Huafeng also frowned. Really? Just by relying on their own strength, it was indeed very difficult to open that door. If they could have external help, it would be great. Although there were only about 10 people on the other side, they were all powerful people. Perhaps they could really help. To be honest, we didn't open it just now. When we saw this door open, we felt regretful. If we can open it together, it will be beneficial for both of us, right? The man in the lead was honest and directly said his thoughts. Elder Huafeng stared at him for a while before finally saying, okay. Inside the door, it was silent. Chu Luiyue sat cross-legged quietly with his eyes closed, constantly devouring the surrounding energy of heaven and earth. Unlike outside, the energy here was very pure, so there was no need to worry about the manic situation from before. The water droplets slowly rotated, restraining all the energy. It was like water flowing into the sea, calm and silent. As time passed, Chu Luiyue's aura continued to strengthen. Soon, it was night. Elder Huafeng and the others stood in front of the door with grim expressions. At this moment, the sky had completely darkened, and the surroundings were dark. Only the door emitted a faint red light. It was like the gates of hell, cold and eerie. The atmosphere was tense, and the air seemed to freeze inch by inch. We have tried all kinds of methods, but we can't even get within 3 steps of this door, let alone open it. Elder Huafeng finally spoke, and every word he spoke was like a heavy stone that smashed into the hearts of everyone present. Many people had helpless looks on their faces. They had indeed tried their best. However, there were some things that couldn't be done. No matter how many methods he came up with, none of them worked. Elder, are you planning to give up? Sure Rueer asked with a frown as he wiped the sweat off his forehead. Elder Huafeng fell silent. Of course, he did not want to give up. Chuyu was still inside, and he did not know whether he was dead or alive. He was the one who agreed to bring her out. If he couldn't bring her back safely, he would feel really bad. He was still waiting to take him as his disciple after the matter in the northern region of the wilderness was over. But, they were indeed unable to open the door. Even if all the people from Spirit Grace Mountain moved together, they were unable to move the door in the slightest. At this moment, an elder at the side suddenly exclaimed. In such a quiet atmosphere, This sound was especially abrupt. Elder Hua Feng frowned and looked over. What's wrong? That elder raised his head in shock. He was holding a green jade token in his hand, and his fingertips were trembling slightly. Hua Feng. Dan Qing is looking for us. What? Elder Hua Feng was shocked and immediately ran over. What did Dan Qing say? Where is he now? That elder handed over the green jade token in his hand. Look. Just now, my token sensed Dan Qing's news. Elder Hua Feng took the token and took a closer look. He found that there was indeed an additional star on it. Dan Qing and I once went out together. In order to make it easier for us to contact each other, we left this behind. But this matter has passed for many years. If I didn't see this just now, I would have almost forgotten about it. The elder explained in a low voice. His face was still filled with shock and joy. At the very least, this means that Dan Qing is still alive. As long as we follow this, we should be able to meet up with them. Everyone's previous dejection was swept away, and their spirits were much higher. After being in the northern region of the primordial world for so long, other than Jiang Ji1, they hadn't seen anyone else from the academy appear. They were almost in despair. Now that Elder Danqing's news had appeared, they finally saw a glimmer of hope. Wait, this time won't be like the previous time, right? Another elder asked with some lingering fear. Previously, they thought that they had found Elder Bo Yen, but in the end, it was all for naught. If this time, probably not. This news can only be sent out by Danqing's own power. So there's basically no problem. Hearing this, everyone secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Elder Hua Feng's heavy and oppressive mood finally eased a little. But soon after, his brows furrowed again. It was a good thing that Dan Qing had sent back news. But on their side, there was still Chuyu trapped inside. It was impossible to abandon Chuyu here alone. The others followed his gaze and also thought of this matter. They couldn't help but fall silent and look at each other. Elder Hua Feng thought for a moment and returned the green jade token. Respond to his message and see if he can come over. We can't leave for the time being. That elder nodded. Okay. After saying that, he asked again. Then. Hua Feng, how long do we have to wait here? If Dan Qing couldn't come over, then, they couldn't wait here forever. After all, this was the first time they had received a message from the academy since they came here. Elder Hua Feng closed his eyes. Let's wait and see. In fact, he wasn't sure either. Ziyuan, you said that Elder Dan Qing and the others were separated from you for the second time, right? That elder suddenly raised his head and asked. Jiang Ji1 was standing not far away, but it was as if she didn't hear anything. Her eyes were staring blankly at the ground, and no one knew what she was thinking. That elder raised his voice again. Ziyuan. Jiang Ji1 came back to her senses, and her expression was still a little absent-minded. Oh, right. The situation was critical at that time, so we were separated. I don't know, where did Master and the others go? That elder nodded. Don't worry, we should be able to meet up with your master and the others soon. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1354. After saying that, the elder noticed that Jiang Ji1's face seemed to have turned paler. He couldn't help but ask with concern, Ziyuan, what's wrong? Jiang Ji1 forced a smile. No, nothing. I'm just feeling a little uncomfortable. It was indeed difficult for her to feel comfortable in such a sorry state. Then you should rest well for a while. Originally, he was too lazy to say this, But who asked Jiang Jiwan to be one of Dan Qing's most beloved disciples? When they met and Dan Qing saw Jiang Jiwan's current state, he would probably be in a bad mood. They still had to give each other face. Thank you, Elder. Jiang Jiwan lowered her head again. No one knew that her hands were tightly clenched in her sleeves. Her sharp nails dug into her palms and almost bled, but she didn't feel anything. How could, Master and the others are still alive? And they even contacted this side. What should I do? If both sides really meet, then, how should I explain? Great nervousness and fear surged in her heart, causing Jiang Jiwan to almost suffocate. The night in the northern region of the Great Desolate Land was always very short. Everyone only rested for a while before the sky was already bright. After some rest, they recovered some strength. Elder Hua Feng stood in front of the door with his hands behind his back. His old eyes were fixed on the door. Elder, do you feel that the energy here has become much calmer and gentler since Chuyu entered yesterday? Moreover, that dragon's roar hasn't been heard again. Shi Rui walked to Elder Hua Feng's side and asked in a low voice. Elder Hua Feng nodded thoughtfully. You noticed it too. If not for this, they probably wouldn't have been able to stay here peacefully yesterday. However, this calmness made him even more worried about the situation inside the door. It had been so long, but there was still no movement from inside. It's not a good idea to keep waiting like this. Shi Rui muttered and suddenly thought of something. By the way, Elder. Does Rong Xiu know that you guys are here? He shouldn't know. Elder Hua Feng pondered for a moment. Before we came here, Rong Xiu didn't seem to be in the academy. What's wrong? Shi Rui shook her head. She just thought that if Rong Xiu was here, there might be a way. After all, his relationship with Chu Yu was not shallow. According to his temperament, he should have a way to deal with this kind of situation. Unfortunately, now, forget it, I'll take advantage of this period of time to adjust my body's condition. If Chu Yu still doesn't move after a while, Elder Hua Feng gritted his teeth. Chu Luyue was naturally unaware of the situation outside. She put all her energy into cultivation. After some time, she finally opened her eyes slowly. Taizu, do you know what time it is now? In a trance, she actually felt that a long time had passed. Usually, Taizu would remind her in such situations. But this time, she waited for a long time but did not hear any response from Taizu. Taizu! Taizu! Chu Luyue shouted in her heart again. Taizu's voice finally came slowly. About a month. Chu Luyue was shocked. On one hand, it was because she thought that only a few days had passed at most. Who knew that it had already been a month? On the other hand, it was because Taizu's voice was exceptionally weak. Chu Luyue had been with Taizu for so long, but she had never heard him speak in such a weak voice. It was as if all his strength had been exhausted, and he was only left with his last breath. Taizu! What's wrong? Chu Luyue asked anxiously. I'm fine. I'm just a little sleepy. Taizu seemed to want to force himself to stay awake, but it didn't have any effect. In fact, ever since he entered this canyon, he had been feeling sleepy. However, he was originally a remnant soul, so logically speaking, it was impossible for him to feel this way. In addition, the canyon was filled with danger, so he didn't mention this to Chu Luyue. Unexpectedly, as time passed, this feeling didn't lessen. Instead, it became more and more serious. Especially after entering this place, a sleepiness that he had never felt before surged up and almost drowned him. If Chu Luyue hadn't called out to him, he would have fallen asleep and didn't know when he would wake up. Taizu, are you okay? Chu Luyue was still worried. Ever since they met, she had never seen Taizu like this. Could it be that there's something wrong here? She couldn't feel it clearly, but she felt that it was similar to the cultivation places. However, judging from Taizu's reaction, that wasn't the case. It's nothing. I'm just sleepy. Everything else is fine. Taizu's voice became even weaker. Don't worry about me, I'll be fine after sleeping for a while. Chu Liyue frowned. Then, if you feel uncomfortable in any way, tell me immediately. Taizu responded in a low voice. The surroundings fell silent again. Chu Liyue looked at the wordless tombstone not far away. Crack. There was a crisp sound. A tiny crack appeared at the top of the wordless tombstone. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat. She quickly took 2 steps forward. There was only a deep black in the crack. Other than that, nothing else could be seen. There were no energy fluctuations. However, Chu Liyue couldn't calm down. This tombstone that appeared in the canyon of the northern region of the primordial world was at least 1,000 years old. After so many years, this tombstone had always been fine. Why did it suddenly crack after she came here for a short while? Chu Liyue reached out her hand, but she instantly felt a biting cold aura surging out from it. Boom! Chu Liyue quickly set up a barrier in front of her. Crack! The barrier instantly shattered. A terrifying aura came over and flew toward Chu Liyue's face. Chu Liyue's body flickered with a golden light, and the pure gold sacred armor was instantly summoned. In the next moment, that force collided with Chu Liyue. Her chest shook, and her body was instantly sent flying. She fell heavily to the ground. Moreover, she drew a long distance above the ground. Bang! Her back slammed against the door, creating a loud bang. Pooh! Chu Liyue spat out a mouthful of blood. At the same time, the people who were waiting outside the door heard the commotion and looked at the door in shock. There's movement inside. Elder Hua Feng was delighted and was about to rush over. As long as there was a sound, it could basically prove that Chu Yu was still alive. However, just as he took a step forward, a few strange sounds suddenly came from both sides. He stopped in his tracks and looked up at the canyon in front of him. The mountain walls on both sides began to crack. A large piece of rock rolled down from above. A look of panic flashed across his eyes. Everyone! Retreat immediately! Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.